Hello, everyone. I am your host, Clifford Johnston, with the Mojave Podcast Transmission. Today is July 20th, 2026. It is 1 p.m., and without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. We got a few things we're going to cover today. I'm going to have to mess around with the camera, but here we go. Without further ado, let's get this stuff on. Decaf Decoy just went live. He usually has some cool stuff he's talking about. I'd like to check in with him, but we got tons of stuff today, so we might not have time.
Scientists just killed 100.
Okay, so we're going to turn off the mic for this one because he has music. I'm not sure if it's copyrighted or not, but basically it's saying that the stuff, the bacteria from this frog is able to attack the tumor cells. And yeah, it's pretty amazing what we're discovering. And you guys can just kind of see the little diagram of that, and Japan's doing it. And yeah, okay, there's more, you know. Anyway.
Far less power, generated far less heat.
So I've already pre-watched this a
For the first half
ton,
of the 20th,
and I wanted to react on this a bit because as a child I learned this stuff, and here's the guy who makes it, and I like to do this right off the bat when they're new. So he has 16,000.5 subscribers. Go ahead and give him a subscribe. I like to do this like this, and I'll like. Here you go. And this stuff is phenomenal information. This stuff right here, the technology we killed in the 1960s is now worth $3.3 billion. And I think that's just like crazy. But you know, people don't even understand how easy it is. I mean, to understand this stuff, and like people like him make it pretty easy to understand. So what I was gonna do is let it play through. He did a little description of the video. I don't think that's AI, so he did pretty good. I'm not gonna read it, but you guys can read that. And here we go. Without further ado, let's start off with
this. A single
this.
piece of technology powered virtually everything.
And I'm gonna speed it up a tad because we got tons of things we're gonna cover today.
Long-distance telephone networks, military radar, and the first computers all depended on it. Then in 1947, a replacement arrived, and within 2 decades, every major manufacturer on the planet had stopped producing it entirely and moved on.
The vacuum
tubes. That is what everyone thought. In 2020,
you see, like I really love the CRTs. There's one in our yard laying flat down. I'm gonna try to restore it.
25. The global market for that same technology is valued at roughly $3.3 billion.
The back casing is awful. The back casing is completely sun rot, but that's not the point. We could probably make a new case, 3D print it, or worst comes to shove, we could like literally manufacture our own thing. Like, I'm not worried about it.
Projected to surpass $5 billion within the decade. That technology is the vacuum
master
tube.
craftsman here. I'm an engineer. The case is not the problem.
In a London physics laboratory more than a century ago. In London, in 1904, a British engineer named John Ambrose Fleming built the first...
Okay, so it's just this stuff about the music. Like I really like it. It's great and everything, but like I'm not quite sure if it's copyrighted or not, and I don't want to have copyright strikes on my channel. So I was trying to skip ahead to see if he had stuff that didn't have the music on it, and I'm pretty sure it's like consistently through here. But that's also another reason why I'm speeding it up a little bit, so it sounds a little bit off tempo for the AI algorithm. So like it's like free and fair use at that point. But I also asked if I could put this on. But anyway, usually they say, yeah, like this stuff right here is educational. Usually people don't care like if you talk about their educational stuff, like, right? So
the oscillation valve.
Anyway, so that stuff right there, it's like the predecessor to a rheostat, but a rheostat is more like a solid state.
Fleming built the first practical vacuum tube.
It's very amazing.
A 2-electrode device he called the oscillation valve. 2 years later, on the other side of the Atlantic, American inventor Lee DeForest added a 3rd electrode to create what he called the Audion, the world's first triode. That single addition gave engineers the ability to amplify electrical signals for the first time, and it changed the trajectory of the entire 20th century. Within 2 decades, vacuum tubes were the
So
backbone
I love all the pictures that he's actually putting up of this stuff, which is another reason why I wanted to showcase this guy, because he's actually doing some well, you know, deserved. Well, it's not the word I was trying to. I'm giving him like praise that's well deserved because of this. Going through there and the internet and finding all this stuff and not just using AI to generate stuff is pretty cool. Like, you know, like I
of
miss
global
stuff like this, so I'm glad people are still doing this.
communications infrastructure. Radio broadcasting, long-distance telephone networks, and eventually television all depended entirely on tubes to amplify and transmit signals across continents and oceans. Every major electronics company
Okay, and so another thing we were studying in our Declaration of Signal Independence. Sorry, folks, one second. Was the fact that when the Vrillon message, we were talking about the Vrillon message, right? And how it was hacked. And back then, when you had to set up an array, you had to set up these vacuum tubes. You had to set up stuff like this, which made it really, really like hard, in my opinion, to make this like impossible for somebody else not to know what was going on. So like, yeah, it's just amazing. So I wanted to cover some of this technology talk right now to help people that maybe don't understand, because I grew up learning this stuff when I was like 10, dude. Like, my godfather was into this stuff. He tore apart circuit boards right in front of me as a kid in his hobby shop, and we would just do this all the time. Learning about capacitors, resistors, diodes, transistors. Where did they come from? Of course that came out, and he was like, well, vacuum tubes were before that, and then, like, I don't really have one, and then eventually he came and brought one. He's like, this is what they used to look like, and I'm like, oh my God, where did you find this? And he's like, I had one at the shop, but I didn't have one right here. So yeah, this is crazy, you know? You have people like that in your life, and then you learn things that, you know, he was a fireman in the Watts riots, so he's learned a few things, you know, and he's still around, but he's getting pretty old, and I just like to show tribute to people who actually brought this country forward, you know, and this
the
isn't,
world from RCA
it shouldn't
and
be
General
forgotten.
Electric to Telefunken, Sylvania, and Philips competed to manufacture the best vacuum tubes on the market. For the first half of the century, these glass and metal components were arguably the single most important technology in all of electronics.
Of course it was.
The most dramatic proof
It
of
changed-
what vacuum
it
tubes
changed
could
the,
accomplish came
voltage.
in 1946, when
It
engineers
was able to change the voltage and things. It made, when you made the transistor, it made those big room to see the computer. That's a computer they're in right now, and that computer was the size of a room. And usually those were NASA computers for the moon landings and all those missions and stuff like that. And that's why Houston, we have a problem, and it was just one spot. But like, you know, it's not just it's not just a Houston thing. But anyway, like, I'm just trying to get to the point here that, like, it was so big, and he's gonna go over this, that, to be quite honest, the computers we have right now would not exist without the transistor. There's just, it would never have been this small. Like, there was never a way to, we were becoming very limited with what we could do. I'm not to saying that, like, some engineer couldn't come up with this, you know, maybe 100 years down the line and made something like a Pip-Boy on your wrist that you see in Fallout, because those use transistors, right? You see them on the side of the wrist. But that doesn't mean that that's just fictional. Like, it doesn't mean that it actually was able to make a CRT tube TV on the side of your wrist, like, function. Like, that's, like, very, very slim in my mind that can happen. But if we kept going, we might have been able to do it, but I don't know now. Maybe some hobbyist. Someday, I want to make a CRT touchscreen. That would be sick. Or at least like a fake touch, which is like you use infrared like a Wii remote to make it touch, but instead of the Wii remote, it's like your hand. Like I almost don't want something in your hand like a wand or anything like a Wii remote, but like if you just, like a glove maybe, or if you just put like a stylus on your finger, so you could, like, or suction cups, or so it can understand, that the infrared can understand what you're doing a little bit, to do hand gestures. That would be sick if you could, you know, just, I don't know. I was coming up with stuff like this, but it would also require different technology to not just use a Wii remote thing, because that's infrared. But anyway, it's super easy. To me anyway. But like, what I'm trying to come up is, like, it was as big as this room, and this was just one computer, and the transistors were able to change the voltage of the stuff to make it so you could do things. If you can't change the voltage to step it up and step it down, there's no point. I mean, nothing. You wouldn't even be able to have a radio. Like, I mean, this stuff is. It was getting kind of crazy when we chose to not do batteries and we went to alternating current and stuff like that from Edison and the Tesla era and all that, because we didn't really understand what the output of either end of the spectrum would have been. And I'm actually very versatile in what could have been of Tesla's world, but there would have been it would not have functioned like we would have thought. It would have eventually failed. Like you would never been able to have that much copper hanging. The copper from their power plants was so much more. They needed so much more resources. Would never be feasible for cross continental electricity grids and anything like that we know today. So that's one thing that, like, even with Tesla and all of his beautiful tech, like the alternating current is way better. Like, I mean, and Edison was the one that really wanted to do the DC, and then he stole Tesla's patent for AC. But the thing is they still worked underneath the same company. That's a long story to get into. And Edison bought Tesla out. It just, so anyway, it was like a competitive thing, and eventually stole the funding and all that. So Tesla he couldn't proceed if he wanted to, and yeah, it got kind of nasty. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really happy about hearing shit like that. Humanity needed that tech, but where would we be now if we had such a soft grid? We wouldn't even have like control over our own population, and I don't mean like control. I mean like being able to understand the weather, like control, like go outside and have faith the fact that, like, you're not gonna get rained on. Because back then they didn't even understand. Like they look at how they used to dress, like rain, sleet, snow, hail. Like they better be prepared for everything. Oh man. So anyway, it was just a different time, folks.
Years at the University of Pennsylvania's Moore School of Engineering, completed ENIAC, the world's first general
See, I told you. I told you.
purpose
And I know this was
computer.
pre-watched a little bit, but it wasn't like I skipped things. Okay, I was just skipping through. I didn't really watch the whole thing.
ENIAC contained approximately
Look at those. So I want you to understand how many vacuum tubes that is. That's like cars worth of vacuum tubes, like the mass of a truck worth of vacuum tubes. It's insane. And then the resistors, you still had
18,000
resistors and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, but vacuum tubes did it way more efficiently. And the capacitors, you still had capacitors back then, and 5 million hand soldered joints across panels. 5 million for one computer.
70,000 resistors, 10,000 capacitors, and roughly 5 million hand-soldered joints. It filled a room measuring 50 by 30 feet, weighed around 30 tons, and consumed between 150 and 174 kilowatts of electricity, enough to power a small neighborhood. It could perform up to 5,000 additions per second, which was faster than anything ever built before it by several orders of magnitude. But ENIAC also exposed the fundamental weakness of vacuum tubes in a way that was impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
The machine burned through a tube roughly every day or two,
Yeah.
and with 18,000 of them running simultaneously, locating and replacing the failed one was a constant engineering challenge.
Oh yeah.
ENIAC had to run continuously because the thermal stress of powering tubes on and off actually shortened their lifespan further.
Yep.
On the battlefield during World War II, vacuum tubes proved
And then that was the thing of like the whole back in the day where you would leave your CRT TV on, like if you were gonna come back in like an hour or whatever, because it actually hurt it more to keep turning it on and off.
equally critical. The cavity magnetron, a specialized vacuum tube invented at the University of Birmingham in 1940, could generate high-power microwaves at short wavelengths for the first time, making compact radar possible for ships and aircraft. The magnetron was considered so strategically valuable that British officials carried a prototype across the Atlantic Ocean in secret as part of what became known as the Tizard mission, one of the most
See,
important
that music
technology
right there is
transfer.
like something that I get irritated with. Like, it can't all be done without the music, because like I'm terrified of getting copyrighted.
In the history of modern warfare. The engineers at Bell Labs in Murray Hill, New Jersey, watched all of this unfold, the size, the heat, the constant tube failures, and they believed there had to be a better path forward. On December 16, 1947, physicists John Bardeen and Walter Brattain, working under the direction of William Shockley, successfully demonstrated the world's first transistor, All three men would go on to share the
Check that out. Nobel Prize. That's how we do it.
Nobel Prize in Physics in 1956 for this work. The transistor did not kill the vacuum tube overnight, and that is a common misconception. For much of the 1950s, engineers genuinely did not know which technology would dominate certain markets, and tubes continued to outperform transistors in radio frequency circuits, audio amplification, and high-power systems. But the advantage...
Okay, so you see what that was there was high power. Did you notice how that computer, how they noticed that they said how many it was enough electricity for a full town? Yeah, you couldn't just put that much voltage through those transistors back then. That just wasn't feasible.
Of solid state were overwhelming for everyday
But
applications.
small things, yeah.
Transistors were dramatically smaller, lighter, and more durable. They consumed far less power, generated far less heat, and once integrated circuits arrived in the 1960s, packing millions of transistors onto a single silicon chip. The economics became impossible for any manufacturer to argue with. The first commercial transistor radios appeared in 1954, and by the end of that decade, solid-state electronics were taking over in radios, televisions, and consumer devices
Look at
across
that whole
the board.
thing. We got one.
One by one,
Just
the
chilling in the
major
living room.
vacuum tube manufacturers, RCA, General Electric, Sylvania, Tungsol, Mullard, Telefunken, began shutting down their tube production lines permanently, and the factories went dark across 3 continents. Skilled workers dispersed into other industries, and decades of institutional manufacturing knowledge simply disappeared with them. The consensus across the global electronics industry was final and unanimous, and it said the vacuum tube's time was over. The real question is, what was happening in the places nobody was watching? Because vacuum tubes never actually vanished from the world, not even close. They retreated from the consumer electronics that ordinary people interacted with every day, but they quietly held their ground in a handful of critical domains where solid-state technology simply could not match what tubes could do. If you own a microwave oven, you own a vacuum tube right now and probably never realized it. The cavity magnetron, the same type of tube that powered World War II radar, is still the core component inside virtually every microwave oven on the planet. It generates microwaves at a frequency of 2.45 gigahertz, and over 1 billion magnetrons are currently in active use around the world, with millions more manufactured every single year. Solid-state microwave generators exist, but for the price point of a consumer microwave oven, the magnetron remains nearly impossible to beat. The single most mass-produced vacuum tube in the history of electronics is sitting in kitchens across the developed world, hiding in plain sight. In military and defense systems, specialized vacuum tubes like klystrons and traveling wave tubes remain deeply embedded in the infrastructure that nations depend on for security. Long-range naval radar still relies on tube-based transmitters to generate the massive radio frequency power needed to detect targets at extreme distances. Satellite communication systems and electronic warfare equipment continue to use traveling wave tube amplifiers for their superior power output at microwave frequencies, and North America holds the largest share of that market, driven by defense spending and satellite investment. That concentration of tube technology in military systems was a warning sign about supply chain vulnerability, but almost nobody in the broader electronics world was paying attention. Vacuum tubes also play a direct role in fighting cancer. Medical linear accelerators, the devices most commonly used for external beam radiation therapy, use either klystrons or magnetrons to generate the microwave energy that accelerates electrons to near the speed of light. When those electrons strike a tungsten target, they produce high-energy X-rays used to precisely target and destroy tumors. The first clinical linear accelerator for radiotherapy was installed at Hammersmith Hospital in London in 1952, and the technology remains the worldwide standard today. And then there is Voyager, perhaps the most extraordinary testament to vacuum tube durability ever recorded. Launched by NASA in 1977, Voyager 1 is now the most distant human-made object in existence, approximately 15.8 billion miles from Earth, traveling through interstellar space after crossing the boundary of our solar system's heliosphere in 2012. A critical component keeping the spacecraft in communication with Earth is a traveling wave tube amplifier that has been operating continuously for nearly 49 years. In 2020, The traveling wave tube amplifier was inducted into the Space Foundation's Space Technology Hall of Fame. As recently as April of 2026, NASA
Again
shut
with the
down
music.
one of Voyager 1's
But like,
science
I wanted to say that like the Voyager is an amazing spacecraft.
instruments to conserve dwindling power. But the spacecraft and its vacuum tube transmitter continue to send data from a region of space no other human-made object has ever reached. And that is only the survival story from the technical and scientific world. What happened next in the consumer market is the part almost nobody saw coming.
There you go.
Audiophiles, the enthusiasts who pursue the highest quality of sound reproduction, have valued vacuum tube amplifiers for decades because of their distinctive sonic characteristics. Tube amplifiers produce a form of harmonic distortion that many listeners perceive as warmer, richer, and more natural than what solid-state amplifiers deliver. This is not purely subjective opinion, because the harmonic profiles are measurably different on laboratory test equipment. The high-end tube audio market continues to grow, driven by a broader cultural interest in analog sound that includes the global resurgence of vinyl records. For electric guitarists, vacuum tube amplifiers remain the undisputed gold standard. The warm, dynamic overdrive that tube amps produce at higher volumes is a core element of the sound of rock, blues, and jazz. And major manufacturers like Fender, Marshall, Vox, Mesa Boogie, and Orange continue to produce tube amps, while musicians continue to pay premium prices. In 2024, tube guitar head amplifiers accounted for roughly 38% of total revenue in that segment, even as digital modeling amplifiers grew rapidly around them. And no, that market share is not a nostalgia tax from aging musicians. It is working professionals choosing the tool they believe sounds best in a market where cheaper digital alternatives are everywhere. One of the most significant developments in the modern vacuum tube industry is the revival of Western Electric. Originally the manufacturing arm of AT&T and Bell Telephone for over a century, the company was restructured in 1984, and its trademark was acquired by entrepreneur Charles Whitener in 1995. He relaunched Western Electric as a vacuum tube and high-end audio manufacturer, restarting production of the legendary 300B triode in 1997, and eventually building a modern factory in Rossville, Georgia. At a major audio exposition in 2026, Western Electric announced plans to bring production of the 12AX7, the single most widely used preamp tube in guitar amplifiers worldwide, back to American soil, a significant move given that virtually all tubes used in the United States have been manufactured overseas for decades. And that brings us to why domestic production matters so much, because the clock on the global tube supply chain was already ticking, and the industry just could not hear it yet. In March of 2022, the global vacuum tube supply chain was thrown into immediate chaos. Following the onset of the conflict in Ukraine, Russia imposed a ban on the export of over 200 categories of goods, and vacuum tubes were on the list. For an industry that the mainstream electronics world had completely forgotten about, the disruption was staggering. A company called Electro Harmonics, founded by Mike Matthews, owned and operated a large tube manufacturing factory in Saratov, Russia, that produced tubes under 7 major brand names at once: Tungsol, Electro Harmonics, EH Gold, Genelex Gold Lion, Mullard, Svetlana, and Sovtek. Those 7 brands together supplied a massive share of the tubes used in guitar amplifiers, professional audio equipment, and audiophile gear across the entire world. When the export ban hit, all 7 brands went dark overnight, and tube prices spiked across the global market within days. Some vendors pulled their websites offline entirely. Others stopped accepting new orders because they could not keep up with the wave of panic buying from musicians and studios scrambling to stockpile whatever was left. The restrictions were eventually resolved and shipments resumed over time, but with higher wholesale prices and persistent supply uncertainty. The crisis forced the entire industry to confront a reality it had been ignoring for decades, which is that the world's vacuum tube supply was concentrated in a small handful of countries, and a single geopolitical event could sever it overnight. The only other major production sources were JJ Electronic in Slovakia, which was founded in the early 1990s using old Tesla factory equipment, and now produces over 40 types of vacuum tubes, and several manufacturers in China. In the United States, Western Electric was the sole domestic producer, and at the time it was making only one tube type. But the vacuum tube industry was not finished reinventing itself, not even close. At NASA's Ames Research Center, engineers have been developing nanoscale vacuum channel transistors, devices fabricated on silicon carbide wafers using standard semiconductor manufacturing techniques. But instead of pushing electrons through solid material the way conventional transistors work, they move electrons through nanoscale vacuum channels etched into the chip. Electrons travel faster through a vacuum than through a solid, and vacuum-based devices are inherently immune to the radiation damage that is one of the most persistent problems for electronics in space. Conventional semiconductor chips are vulnerable to cosmic radiation that can cause errors, degrade performance, or
Okay.
destroy circuits entirely.
So this was another thing. Oh, we're almost done. So this is
Electronics in
another
space.
great video. But
Conventional semiconductor chips
so what I
are
was
vulnerable.
trying to get at when I was trying, sorry, we were talking about. Where is this? Yeah, this. Okay, so when we were talking about the Declaration of Signal Independence, with the interference from space is a big thing. Okay, and yeah, so there's that, and I was talking about the influence on our systems. Anything can happen like that, even from space can cause like a Carrington event, fried the electrical wires. But since we had a lot of vacuum tube tech back then, it didn't really fry a lot of our integrated circuits. Now we have a lot of integrated circuits and we don't have vacuum tubes. If something hits, we're fucked. So I want you guys to understand that we were thinking way better back then. We were thinking long run. Analog is long run. And a lot of people like that about America, that we discovered that and we just kind of like went with it. And we showed what we could do with it during the wars and stuff. Really, without any of these radars and anything like that, would have been impossible to coordinate squadrons and stuff across. You wouldn't have been able to do anything like that. So here we go. This is what I mean, but we need to harden our systems. I don't know if that means like we can't just like put things in a vacuum tube, but what I'm trying to say is we thought about hardening our systems back then. That's a hardened system. Vacuum tubes.
To cosmic radiation that can cause errors, degrade performance, or destroy circuits entirely.
I was trying to stop it on that thing. Destroy circuits entirely. See? Destructive SEEs. SEB, single event burnout. And yeah, whatever. SEGR, single event gate rupture. Both of these are two different mechanisms, but difficult to distinguish from one another. Concern for more power. MOSFETs, MOSFETs. Gate oxide can be damaged from an ion strike. Voltage and current dependent. And the SDR, single event dielectric rupture, similar to SEGR, but on non-power devices such as capacitor oxides.
Errors, degrade performance, or destroy circuits entirely, and NASA currently relies on expensive radiation-hardened chips and heavy shielding to compensate.
See? To compensate. And that's out there in space. So what happens if like the stuff that, like if our atmosphere is null, it doesn't mean anything because the stuff coming in is so powerful, like from a solar flare. Okay, and like are we able to know how to power down our devices? Do we have the satellite that's able to tell us, that's closer to the sun, that says, hey look, you're gonna have something hit and you better just turn off all your devices and throw them into the Faraday bag and pray the system doesn't fry your electric wires over your head. And if they're not on, you know, it won't have to fight, but like if it's off, then it will still like vibrate with the amount of electrons coming in from this event. And there should be a way that we could fly back transformer and take energy in from an event like that. But we're just not there yet in our society. But that's like, I think in my opinion, a Kardashev type 2 scale, like where you've harnessed your planet that much that when something is supposed to be like an event that wipe you out and you can use it to your advantage, yeah, you're on type 2 civilization.
Nanoscale vacuum transistors have been tested at radiation doses typical of deep space missions and survived without measurable degradation. And the applications extend beyond spacecraft to nuclear facilities and particle physics experiments. The concept is elegant. Take the one thing vacuum tubes always did better than solid-state devices, operate reliably under extreme radiation and extreme temperatures,
Yep.
and combine it with everything the semiconductor industry has learned about miniaturization over the past 60 years. Multiple independent market research firms now value the global vacuum tube market at approximately $3.3 billion as of 2025.
We just threw it
with
away.
projections reaching roughly $5.3 billion by 2032 at a compound annual growth rate between 6.8 and 8.4%. The thermionic vacuum tube segment alone, covering traditional tubes used in audio and radio frequency
Look at all that good
amplification,
stuff right there.
was valued at approximately $910 million. The traveling wave tube amplifier market is on track to reach roughly $500 million, driven by aerospace, defense, and satellite communications. Every microwave oven on the planet runs on a vacuum tube. Cancer patients receive treatment from machines powered by vacuum tubes. The farthest human-made object ever launched is still transmitting data through a vacuum tube that has worked for nearly 5 decades. Military radar systems defending entire
Again, I
nations
think it's better,
depend
but
on vacuum
I hope
tubes.
this is just
in
AI
recording
music to
studios
try to
and
do
concert
intro
venues around
and
the world,
outro music, bro,
musicians
but it's
choose
totally not needed, dog.
vacuum tubes over modern alternatives because the sound is different in a way that digital processing has never been able to fully replicate. The vacuum tube was declared obsolete more than 60 years ago, but a $3.3 billion global market and growing says the obituary was premature.
Something like
On
that.
July 18th, at around 2 p.m. local time, a magnitude 4.3 earthquake.
Okay, so this stuff is pretty terrifying. I don't know if I want to jump right into that yet, but we have something that just kind of broke right here. Here.
Good afternoon. I'm James Barnacle, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI New York Field Office, here joined by the Commissioner of the world's finest police department, New York City Police Department. Thank you, Commissioner Tisch, for being here. And Jamie McDonald, the Deputy United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today, just before 9 a.m., a man by the name of Andrew Arabaca, A-R-R-A-B-A-C-A, arrived at 26 Federal Plaza, just behind us on Worth Street, at the employee entrance to the building, where he ignited gasoline. He poured gasoline onto the ground and ignited it with a lighter and an incendiary device. That device was a firework, a large firework in a canister. That proceeded to catch on fire, pretty big flame as you've seen on the internet. He then pulled out an airsoft rifle and fired 5 to 7 pellets, if you will, in the direction of 26 Federal Plaza. At that time, Federal Protective Services, 2 officers, a gray suit, a contractor with Allied that is employed to guard this building. And those 3 people and the 2 officers standing behind me in the blue shirts are the officers that intervened and took Mr. Arabaca into custody. Well, he had him on the ground, an FBI agent jumped in and they put handcuffs on him and took him in the building. He is currently in custody and he has been interviewed. Arabaca is a former United States Army soldier. He was enlisted for approximately 4 years, serving from 2001 to 2005. He was a repairman or mechanic on Patriot missile systems. He is 43 years old. There were injuries, and 3 people were injured, minor injuries, 1 civilian and 2 government employees. Right now, our evidence response team is out working with NYPD and our New York Joint Terrorism Task Force to collect evidence, to conduct interviews. We have located a vehicle of Mr. Arabaca's. We have seized that vehicle. We are procuring or obtaining a search warrant. Mr. Arabaca came armed with bad intentions. I will say that 26 Federal Plaza has long been a target of extremists, of terrorists, and today the extremism was brought here. The building was attacked. Mr. Arabaca was looking to injure people and harm people. He had 2 axes, a hammer, a machete, and 3 knives, fixed blade knives. He had, as I said earlier, 6 incendiary devices or fireworks, and he had some other destructive items. Going forward today, like I said, we'll do more interviews, we'll collect more evidence, and we will, and I'll leave to Mr. McDonald to talk about charges. we take this very seriously. On his cart, he had a cart. He had anti-ICE literature on it. When he was being arrested, he yelled derogatory terms to ICE, used bad words, obviously. He is an anti-American, anti-government extremist. We know that from what he said. We know that from what he has said post-arrest. And we know that from what his actions that he tried to take today. So I will turn it over to Police Commissioner
Yeah, that's
Tisch.
fucked up, man. And so, like, this is what I wanted to say to this, because I had no idea that he was a veteran. I had nothing about this, but that's despicable, man. You took the oath to protect your nation, and then you're gonna come back. You worked on the Patriot systems, and you just try to set off a mortar. And what is going on with this dude? Had a mental breakdown. I mean, for sure. I mean, like, you could like make it seem like maybe back then he was a patriot, but now he's an American terrorist. Like, maybe you should phrase it like that. But like,
Thank
I
you,
don't
Jim.
know, bro. Like,
Good afternoon. I am here to provide some additional details about this morning's incident outside of 26 Federal Plaza. This remains an active investigation, and the information
Just
that
a
we
thought,
have is still being gathered and is subject to change. At approximately 8:30 this morning, a call came in to New York City's 911 call center that there was an active shooter outside of 26 Federal Plaza in Lower Manhattan. Two additional calls in the subsequent minutes reported an explosion and a male setting off fireworks at the location. Units from NYPD's 5th Precinct responded within 2 minutes of the first 911 call, and by the time they were on scene, the suspect had already been taken into custody by federal officers. The suspect has been identified, as you just heard, as Andrew Arabaka, 43 years old, of Poughkeepsie. He is believed to be a U.S. Army veteran. His last known address was up in Harlem. His vehicle, a black Toyota RAV4, was located parked in the vicinity of West 124th Street and Broadway, and that vehicle is subject to search pending a search warrant. The entire incident unfolded in view of an NYPD camera positioned on the southwest corner of Worth Street and Broadway. Video and witness statements describe the suspect's actions as follows. At approximately 8:30 a.m., Mr. Arabaka arrived at Worth Street and Lafayette Street in front of 26 Federal Plaza. Once he arrives, he ignites a bundle of what appears to be fireworks, which begin to smoke. He then goes back into his cart and takes out an airsoft rifle and proceeds to brandish it, and he appears to fire several pellets from the airsoft rifle. Next, he pulls out an orange bucket from his cart and runs towards the bushes along the building line. He dumps the contents of the bucket, an incendiary liquid, between two sets of bushes along the perimeter of this property and ignites a fire. Federal agents and officers then run up to the subject, subdue him, and take him into federal custody. On the scene was recovered, among other things, 2 airsoft rifles and the container with the flammable liquid. Also affixed to the suspect's cart was a sign reading "Ice off our streets." During the incident, the suspect was wearing a military-style helmet. This incident occurred along federal property, and the NYPD is supporting the federal government in their investigations. Charges are yet to be filed. Our work with the Joint Terrorism Task Force and the Southern District of New York is critical to keeping our city safe, and I commend the federal agents and contractors and officers who responded to the threat this morning. Now I'm going to turn it over to Deputy United States Attorney Jamie McDonald.
Thank you. I'm Jamie McDonald, the Deputy United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. As you can see, we're here in response to an incident this morning that took place just behind us here at the Jacob K. Javits Center, which houses dozens of federal agencies and thousands of federal employees. I want to thank the work of our law enforcement partners whose rapid response led to the neutralization of the threat and the immediate turn to evidence collection and investigation. Our office, the Southern District of New York, led by the National Security Unit and the General Crimes Units, are working closely with the FBI, the NYPD, FPS, and others to investigate this matter. As you've heard, one individual has been taken into custody. Our investigation is continuing, and we will keep the press and the public updated on charges. Thank you.
All right, time for a few on-topic questions. Which people hold on? Look, we're collecting the evidence, and we know there were anti-government and anti-American statements made, and we know that an incendiary device and gasoline were used to start a fire. Charges are determined by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Right now, the FBI, the New York City Police Department, New York State Police Department, all are members of the task force, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, are out collecting evidence today. We will present that evidence to the United States Attorney's Office, and the United States Attorney will make that charging decision. I don't know what those will be. Aaron? His goal was to target the building. He said that I'm not going to get into all the details of a post-arrest interview, but he was Mirandized, read his rights. He did agree to talk. In that post-arrest interview, he did say he was targeting the building, and he was okay if he hurt or killed people going in and out of the building, whether they were federal employees or civilians. I would mention, a lot of business was came not by the Federal Protective Services. Federal Protective Services, once they mitigated the situation, the building remained open, employees could come and go, and we continued to do work. But some agencies decided to close business for the day. There was a naturalization ceremony scheduled for today that was canceled. And the one civilian victim was an immigrant that had a hearing today for their immigration status. So that's quite unfortunate and quite ironic at the same time. So he arrived in this area, well, I should say, yesterday he went from Harlem. He took the subway down to the Penn Station area. He walked down and stayed overnight in the vicinity of the Holland Tunnel on the street. Then he came down to this area around 5 a.m. He ventured over to our spot a little after 8 o'clock. That's the timeline for his movements. We're still collecting evidence. The NYPD is out doing what the NYPD does great, and they're working with the JTTF on that. He has a couple of encounters with law enforcement that we're not ready to talk about, nothing rising to this level. Look, I would say that protesting in the United States is protected by the First Amendment. We do not track protesters. We do not know who comes and goes as far as protests. So I don't know if he's been involved in any protests at all.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Police respond to a reported theft at a local Dollar General and quickly locate the suspects in a nearby residential neighborhood.
Okay, so this one's pretty cool. As in, like, this guy right, the crime piece down here, you see, it says, not he, she fired the cop's gun and ruined her life. So that's pretty quick. We're not gonna watch that one just yet. I wanted to look at a couple of other things first here. Like this.
Holy shit, it worked.
This group of plants was fed normal tap water, while this group was fed an
Okay, sorry, that was kind of loud. My bad.
exotic type of water.
Shoot.
Pa! Or plasma-activated water.
Essentially, normal water that's been violently
still
kissed by
trying to
plasma
learn.
inside what I call the Skyforge thermos. And the exposure to that plasma radically enhances the composition of the water.
It worked. To the point that the water itself becomes fertilizer, increasing plant biomass by 75%.
I put a lot of thought into designing this plasma thermos because
Okay,
plasma-enhanced
so-
water has the potential to reshape how we look at agriculture.
So remember,
How does contact with plasma turn water into fertilizer?
I don't know why it's not. Okay, I guess I clicked it too many times for it to have fun.
Holy shit, it worked.
This group of plants was fed normal tap water, while this group was fed an exotic type of water.
Okay. Pop. Plasma activated water. So yesterday we were talking about how the typhoon over there in China hit and they didn't, or their crops were withering in the heat too. And it just seems to me like they're worrying about wasting their fertilizer when they could just be turning water into fertilizer too. And yeah, bro, it just seems like if he can do it within a short, like I'm pretty sure that these guys can do it on a scale to help, if they had a hose in their hand to help make sure that that stuff is fixed, bro. But it's just,
Or plasma-activated water.
Essentially, normal
they're
water
not
that's been
doing it
violently
right.
kissed by plasma inside what I call the Skyforge thermos. And the exposure to that plasma radically enhances the composition of the water.
It worked. To the point that the water itself becomes
Exactly.
fertilizer, increasing.
So the water becomes fertilizer is so like you're not going to be getting the yellowing from overwatering. You're not going to be wasting the fertilizer. It's not going to be getting washed out. If they're flooding the flood irrigation, it's going to push the fertilizer out anyway. At least when you have fertilizer in the water as well, it helps add to the quality that the plants need to fully mature, especially quickly if you want it to increase biomass growth. Look at this, the same seedlings, and they're literally double.
Plant biomass by 75%.
I put a lot of thought into
75%.
designing this plasma thermos because
Bro.
plasma-enhanced water has the potential to reshape how we look at
75%.
agriculture.
So, how does contact with plasma turn water into
Yeah, Tony Stark stuff, bro. Tony Stark. Okay, you can figure this stuff out in a cave. So like what I'm talking about is like really though, like honest to God, this stuff is phenomenal. Like, you're not supposed to drink it, but like, not like I've done anything with it, but he says like don't drink it because it's like nitrates. It's not good. But it's different than, you're not supposed to put CO2 carbon like into the onto your, it kills plants. Like this will help it. So this is like a liquid fertilizer, but like it just turns water into liquid fertilizer instantly. And yeah, it just seems to me like you'd want to do this before a typhoon. You do this a couple times before a typhoon, and then, you know, like if it floods, it floods. But like the thing is like the water from the ocean is shit, and that's what it kills the crops. So you got to realize, like, what I mean by hardened systems is the way that like you could figure out a way to quickly harvest that area in an emergency, or keep it and kind of like, do you really need to do the same agriculture if you can just turn water into fertilizer? No, probably not. And then you just start thinking about adding more lights and doing stuff differently, and then doing more cultivation indoors instead of outdoors. And then you get what I mean by how hardened system. Like this stuff right here, we'll watch again. Like actually after this, we'll go back to the earthquakes that are happening in China. But it just seems to be like all of this, all this regulations is for a reason. And that's plasma right there, by the way. It's beautiful. Beautiful plasma arc. But yeah, it's ionizing the air. You've seen it as light in that arc. But yeah, just beautiful. Beautiful. And all that copper winding underneath, giving it that extra voltage it needs to become a plasma arc.
Broken apart into multiple reactive compounds. Apart from the obvious ozone production, there's atomic oxygen and nitrogen, nitric oxide, hydroxyl radicals, nitrogen dioxide.
All very reactive stuff.
See, all stuff that you need to also make bombs, I guess, right? So it's not something that like you really want to think about in that aspect, hopefully. But nitric oxide bomb, hydroxyl radical bomb, nitrogen dioxide bomb, atomic nitrogen and bomb, nitrogen bomb, atomic oxygen's flammable bomb, all of it. Like this is why people don't like, you know, people researching this stuff. But this guy's kind of broken through the filter a bit with his channel, and I love him for it. So like I'm gonna show this as a short. Hopefully, you know, he respects
dioxide,
that. But,
all very reactive stuff that disappears quickly.
However, if those compounds make
quickly
contact with water, they lead to nitrates, nitrites, hydrogen peroxide, and lower pH. These
hydrogen peroxide and low pH. So the first thing you need to like have for that first stage is like either a centrifuge to like spin all that stuff out and then compress it into something usable, like a liquid, any one of those first things. And then yeah, that would be different, but I don't know if they're doing anything like that. No, I don't know about him, but I'm talking about US or whatever, but I'm talking like military industrial complex but anyway, we the people need something to help the plants grow. So here we go.
These are the same nitrogen and oxygen compounds present in plant fertilizer.
Think about that. It's amazing. The plasma combines air and water to make nutrient-rich water. Essentially fertilizer
amazing,
for plants.
right?
Designed a skeleton frame which wraps around both the mixer and an acrylic water chamber, ultimately supporting a high voltage source on
he
the
gets
top
to the weeds of what he did. I already watched it, the whole video.
My decision
he
to
has
use
a huge video on
to
it.
produce high voltage was an intentional decision.
Honest to God, I think I showed this on my channel already.
Because when they're current limited, they are great at producing corona discharges, and corona discharge is really efficient at producing oxidizing compounds compared to, say, a single hot plasma arc. Polarity, baby.
But not
polarity.
this short.
High voltage DC, polarity makes a massive difference with how air is ionized. Ideally, plasma activated water should have a pH near 6 with 10 to 20 parts per million of nitrates and minimal nitrites. Tap water in my little part of the world has a relatively high pH of about 8.3. Using a pH sensitive chemical, you can see the coloration of this tap water is a rich dark blue. On the other hand, tap water with acid added to bring it down to a pH of 6 corresponds to a color of vibrant yellow. Plasma treatment should turn the water from blue to yellow during tests. Giving it power, I stepped back and let plasma do its thing. Within about a minute, there was a noticeable change in coloration, and by exactly 3 minutes, the entire mixing chamber had reached a bright yellow. I filled 6 with potting soil, with 1 triplicate for plasma treatment and the other triplicate for control. Then I was off to find a fast-growing plant species. Radishes, they take the cake with a 3-day sprout time. At day 13, the difference was profound. The control was still looking anemic. The plasma group, different story entirely. Plenty of biomass, and after gently washing the soil out from their roots, the total biomass of the control group was 4 grams, and the plasma treatment group, 7 grams. That is a 75% increase in biomass.
So holy shit, plasma
So holy shit. He's like I remember him actually doing that. I was like, damn, he's like excited. He didn't even think this was gonna work.
activated water increased total harvestable biomass per unit area by 75%. It's amazing.
Holy shit. That's what I want everyone to know that's like what he wanted everyone to get from that. Oh god, but anyway.
On July 18th, at around 2 p.m. local time, a magnitude 4.3 earthquake struck Akto County in Xinjiang's Kizitsu Kyrgyz Autonomous Prefecture with a depth of 10 kilometers. The quake triggered a landslide on a nearby mountain.
You could just hear the mountains.
Video shared online showed thick grey smoke rising from a mountain on the left side of a road and drifting towards the roadside. Another video showed a landslide occurring farther from the road, with dust spreading across the mountain and surrounding area. Since late June, earthquake activity in China appears to have increased. According to China Earthquake Network Center, at least 59 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or above occurred across China between June 28th and July 18th, with earthquakes recorded almost. On July 18th, at around 2 p.m. local time, a magnitude 4.3 earthquake struck Akto County in Xinjiang's Kizitsu Kyrgyz Autonomous Prefecture with a depth of 10 kilometers. The quake triggered a landslide on a nearby mountain, sending large clouds of dust into the air. Videos shared online showed thick grey smoke rising from a mountain on the left side of a road and drifting towards the roadside. Another video showed a landslide occurring farther from the road, with dust spreading across the mountain and surrounding area. Since late June, earthquake activity in China appears to have increased. According to China Earthquake Network Center, at least 59 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or above occurred across China between June 28th and July 18th.
Oh my god.
With earthquakes recorded
I watched some of these, right? Like, and the camera fell off the roof. Look at the chandelier!
Xinjiang 12,
oh my god.
Qinghai 10, Yunnan 9, Tibet 2, Inner Mongolia 2, and Jiangsu 1. There were also 16 earthquakes of magnitude 4 or above, including 4 magnitude 5 or above. At around 12 a.m. on June 29th, a magnitude 5.5 earthquake struck Gaoxiang County in Yibin, Sichuan, at a depth of 6 kilometers. Local authorities said the earthquake injured at least 13 people and forced 196 residents to relocate. Surveillance footage shared online showed buildings shaking violently during the quake. Products fell from supermarket shelves while tiles and range hoods inside homes collapsed. Many residents rushed outside to seek safety. Fish in nearby ponds were also seen behaving unusually, repeatedly jumping out of the water. A student named Chen Chen from Chengdu Industrial College said she went to bed about 20 minutes before the earthquake that night. When the earthquake struck, the strong shaking woke her up immediately. She had no time to grab her glasses or phone, and she was not wearing shoes or clothes. In a panic, she wrapped herself in a blanket and rushed down from the top bunk. Chen Chen recalled that she was terrified and only thought about escaping. She rushed down from the 5th floor almost by crawling and running. When she saw other students fully dressed, she realized she was the only one barefoot and wrapped in a blanket, leaving her feeling embarrassed. Later, she wrote on her social media that she would never sleep naked again. Many people responded. Those of us who experienced the May 12th earthquake know that people in Sichuan no longer dare to sleep naked. And yes, I have gotten used to sleeping fully dressed. There is no other way. I was frightened. On July 8th morning, Gaoxiang County in Yibin was hit by 2 more magnitude 5.0 earthquakes. According to Chinese media reports, people in Chengdu, Chongqing, and other areas said they felt strong
the whole
shaking.
wooden structure.
Videos posted by local residents.
See how it was rocking? It's good though. Like this, you could tell.
And other areas said
like that right there. That was very, very good built. I mean, kind of right. It's tongue and groove. I don't even think it was like. think about that as like a log house, but like it didn't use much.
Videos posted by
Like, and it still, it didn't
County
just
in
fall.
Yibing was
Like,
hit
oh,
by
it's
two
rocking with it,
more
bro. Watch this.
magnitude 5.0 earthquakes.
There's that
According to
angle, and then
Chinese
to the
media
right, it
reports,
does
people
another
in
one.
Chengdu,
Yeah, see?
Chongqing, and other areas said
It's
they
just
felt
kind of
strong
rocking.
shaking.
It's not even
Videos
that much.
posted by local residents showed buildings shaking violently during the earthquakes. Some exterior
The
walls developed cracks, and many
4.8, or
residents
is it
rushed
3?
outside for safety.
So,
The
some
frequent
areas it would
earthquakes
only be
also
like a
caused
3.
concern among local residents. Some said, although I was not at the epicenter, I was
See?
close enough to feel like people and desks could be thrown around. Another said, there were 6 or 7 tremors in one night. How can anyone sleep? This week has been exhausting. At around 5 p.m. on June 16, 2026, a magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck the direct administrated area of Haixi Prefecture in Qinghai. According to Chinese authorities, the earthquake killed 1 person and injured 8 others. Within less than 40 minutes, 7 aftershocks followed, with the strongest reaching magnitude 4.9. Surveillance footage showed staff at a well-decorated restaurant calmly arranging tables before the earthquake struck. The ground suddenly began shaking, the entire room moved violently, and ceiling decorations and lights fell off. The staff members panicked and rushed out. They later said, there was no warning before the earthquake. My legs went weak the moment I ran outside. Once again, I felt how small humans are in the face of nature. All our struggles over gains, losses, and grievances seem insignificant when the ground is shaking beneath us. The topic Haixi earthquake later became a trending topic on Weibo. Residents in Qinghai reported the shaking in downtown Golmud was very strong. During the first earthquake,
didn't have a very big base though.
Tables, windows, and cabinets were all shaking.
Just to say, it
in
probably
my
wouldn't
old
water. If it was
apartment
watered,
on the
it probably
fourth
wouldn't
floor,
have tipped
and
over.
the building itself felt like it was moving.
Sorry.
The second one was weaker,
See the water
and I
in the
barely
plant
felt it.
thing?
During the third one, I
It's
happened to
kinda,
be
they
in the
don't get
bathroom,
it.
and even the washing machine was shaking. On June 23rd and on July 1st, 2026, 2 more magnitude 5.2 aftershocks struck the direct administrated area of Haixi Prefecture in Qinghai. In less than a month, the area experienced multiple earthquakes, including 3 above magnitude 5. Many local residents said, Qinghai again? Earthquakes have been happening so often in Haixi recently. Why are there so many earthquakes this year? Has it really entered earthquake mode?
Yeah.
As earthquakes occurred more
it's
frequently,
a thing.
people also began recalling unusual events reported in different parts of China before and
I
after
think it's the
earthquakes and
drilling
typhoons.
for the oil.
These events have continued to draw attention. On the evening of June 28th, shortly before a magnitude 5.5 earthquake struck Yibing, Sichuan, local residents recorded large numbers of swallows flying around and gathering on power poles. The birds did not return to their nest even at night. Some local residents said the animals sensed it first. There were so many birds outside my home that night. I thought a major rainstorm was coming, but it turned out to be an earthquake. Another said, now we understand. If we see chickens running, birds flying, or animals acting strangely again, we should pack a tent and head outdoors. On the evening of July 4th, a strange cloud formation appeared in Zhangjiakou, Hebei. A large area of dark clouds suddenly covered the sky, resembling waves rolling overhead and moving towards the ground. Videos shared online showed tourists on a grassland in Zhangjiakou capturing the unusual cloud.
Like, another reason why, like, I moved the studio to the truck is because this thing's like not a solid state drive, it's a hard drive. So if an earthquake happens, it kind of needs to have more of a like cushion to fall on, and hopefully like a building doesn't fall on it. And like I have a lot of stuff on here, man. Pictures of the dog that it's just like died. I can't have those go like, and I put them on the cloud and everything. But don't get me wrong, like I can't put everything like all my work on there. So not yet, anyway. And then I've over 30 packs of ramen noodles in here. Over, I think that's like approaching like 30, like 8 or something. And then like 5 different canned meals, tuna, chicken noodle soup, different types of beans, and yeah, a few snacks. Like nothing like, but all it's like a pantry in here. For that reason, in case like the house collapses or something like that, like, you know, you can't get back in there right away, you know, like you got to work to get to your food, and like maybe your food's already squished, like are you going to be able to eat it? And yeah, like just stuff like that. Anyway, there's a fridge that's like in the hallway. If the center beam falls, it could actually land on that fridge, and that could be a very big help to the house. Yeah, I didn't really think about that, but like, damn, like if a 9 hit and that beam falls, like that refrigerator would be nice to catch it. Like if you're running out of the house, that would be nice. Yeah. This weird thought, but this is just crazy, bro. Like, if it's just consistently 5.0s, what's gonna happen next? Like, if it's gonna keep, because there was this increase of like 3 over 7s, like in our region, like alone. But Guatemala got hit with a 7, and then Venezuela got hit with 2 7s. So I'm Southern California, Joshua Tree, California. Like, this is gonna be next. The San Andreas fault. And I mean, like, knocking on wood, I got wood in here and stuff. Like it's just crazy, bro. It really is just duck and cover at that point. But like, you see how they're running out of the buildings. Like, you can't just duck and cover when it comes to stuff like that, because. Or like when the mountain fell on them, like you can't duck and cover for that, bro. Like that's a whole mountain fell on you. But like, when it's a house, it's a little bit lighter than a mountain, and you got to figure that out, because sometimes the screws can hold it together while you're getting out. You can get to a door jamb, but the door jamb's probably not gonna hold if it's a 9. So it's best to just get out before the full shake of the 9 hits. And yeah, hopefully if it's just a pre-quake, like a 3 or something, and then a 9 hits, you're already outside. That's prime. Like, that would be awesome. But it's just, we're on a strike slip fault, which is one of the most dangerous ones. That the ground could just shift, like Venezuela did, like 200 meters or 20 meters at least in one direction. And how is the foundation supposed to hold on to that? Like, your house should better just hold on, is what that is. That's insane. And yeah, that's why I'm in a car. But anyway, let's get going here.
The sky, which had been clear, was quickly covered by a large dark cloud layer. The clouds appeared low and thick, with clear edges creating a dramatic scene. Some people at the scene described the sight as frightening, like a scene from a disaster movie. One person said, "It felt like I was going to be swallowed." The video showed strong winds as the dark clouds moved closer.
That's very
At
ominous.
the same time, golden sunlight broke through gaps
I
in the
remember when they
clouds,
showed
creating
that.
a strong contrast between light and shadow.
It was
The
like
unusual scene surprised many
16
viewers.
days ago. I
Some
still remember
speculated
it.
it was a mysterious cloud, while others asked whether it was a tornado. Many questioned whether the video was AI generated, but several witnesses said the scene was real. On July 10th, videos shared online showed large groups of birds flying over Ningbo and Taizhou in Zhejiang. The birds appeared to leave their nest early and gathered in large numbers, showing unusual behavior.
That's a lot of birds.
Many people commented, "Strange signs in the skies with large
That's
numbers of swallows gathering. Suddenly there were many flies in the classroom and many cockroaches downstairs. I have never seen so many birds flying together. It looks like something is chasing them." Many users said they believed it was a sign of a disaster. At 7 p.m. on July 11th, people around Shanghai and Hangzhou shared photos and videos showing colorful skies. Some showed bright red sunsets,
that
while others
pink
showed
one.
purple, pink, orange, and gray
Wow.
colors changing across the sky.
That's
One
beautiful.
person said,
It-
"The
that
sky in
literally-
Hangzhou changed into 4
wow.
different colors in just 20 minutes." People in Suzhou,
That's so
Jiaxing, and
beautiful.
other areas also said they captured purple skies. Some described the scene as beautiful, while others
That's like sakura. Like the pink flower petals they have over there. I love that tree. That's amazing. That's so beautiful. Oh
called them
man.
strange and frightening. Some said it gave them a feeling that the end of the world was coming.
Well,
On
I
July
hope
16th,
not.
a person
I hope. And if it is, that's beautiful, and you should be happy.
in Henan uploaded a video showing a
'Cause
white
that's
column of light
if
appearing
that's
in
the
the
end of the
sky at
world,
around 7
I'm happy it looks like that. It doesn't look
30
like
p.m.
fucking lightning bolts and black thunderous clouds.
The
Woo-wee!
video showed
You
the
just
light
had a
column with
typhoon, and you're like, it's the end of the world.
clear edges and a sharp outline. Many people commented asking what had been happening recently and saying the scene was unsettling.
It's like my light around
On July
me.
19th, a user on Douyin uploaded
the
a
same
video
color.
claiming to have accidentally captured a dragon-shaped cloud in the sky.
Wow, look at that
People in the comments
go.
said the image was striking and speculated that something bigger might
It's the
happen
wind
this year.
serpent.
Some said Chinese cloud enthusiasts call this type of formation wave clouds, but noted that such a large cloud shape is very rare.
That is
Others
amazing.
suggested that the recent earthquakes in Sichuan and Chongqing might be related and urged local residents to stay alert. The frequent earthquakes in a short period have not only caused public concern but have also led to several earthquake-related disasters. On the morning of July 17, a large mountain collapse occurred in Penshui County, Chongqing. Dash cam footage shared online showed a truck leaving the area shortly before the mountain slide suddenly collapsed. Several buildings fell one after another, and a vehicle that had just entered the area was completely buried. According to an official report, the collapsed area was about 60 meters long, 30 meters high, and 10 meters thick, with a total volume of about 18,000 cubic meters.
The mountain fell on
The
them.
largest unstable rock mass was about 3,000 cubic meters, roughly the size of a building. After the collapse, water, electricity, and gas services were suspended within 1 kilometer of the area, and authorities warned that further collapses remained possible. However, the official casualty figures have drawn questions. Authorities have reported 8 deaths and 34 people missing. But before and after images released by authorities showed that 2 large rows of residential buildings and the foot of the mountain were almost completely buried. Around 12 to 13 buildings collapsed and vehicles were also buried at the site. A local business owner said a shop that had operated for more than 6 years had completely disappeared under the debris. Multiple sources from the scene said those buried included not only residents, but also nearby businesses, passing vehicles, and pedestrians. Based on the estimated population density of more than a dozen 5 to 6 story rental buildings, the actual number of people
This is
trapped
why
could be
I
much
don't live
higher
in a
than
high
the official
density
figure.
area.
Many
It's
have
a false
questioned
sense of
whether the
security,
true death
and
toll
then
may
like
exceed 100, creating a
what
large
I'd hate to say is there was a reason why there's so many people already there for rescue is because they were trying to evacuate them an hour before, and that's not nearly good enough. But like if a civilian was like, yo dude, there's large cracks, there's rocks falling, we need to get people here now, and you wait like 12 hours to get like anybody together to get started evacuating, but the dude started to tell everybody all by themselves, and like then hopefully they got this some people that knew like, yo look, I'm not here for myself, I'm here because like, you know, someone up there is like trying to say like, yo, like you have a job and like I'm trying to get you to do it, and like if you listen to me you're not gonna, you know, see me again. Bye. You know, and I'd get out of that building if somebody came to me and started acting like that. Like, yeah, like I wouldn't just sit there and think that he was crazy. I think I got to get out of the house. And yeah, so it's just, it sucks, man. It sucks.
Gap with the
Because like our society is so
numbers.
fractured right now, I don't even know, like I said, but look at how beautiful that scene is right there. Like without them, you know, and obviously all the dead like buildings and people and stuff, but the view that they looked out every day and they didn't really think like rock slide, like come on bro, like this is what I mean, like I love it but then I don't.
After the incident, disaster drew attention from China's top leadership, with Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Guoqing traveling to the site.
And this is
Some
more like a
observers said the
mountain
response showed
slide.
the seriousness of the disaster. Meanwhile, Chongqing police said they were cracking down on online rumors and punished people who posted disaster-related information. Some posts were also removed, making it harder for the public to access information from the scene. Analysts said the
That's
mountain
not right
collapse
at
was
all. They
directly
need to
linked to the
figure their
series
shit
of
out, bro. They need to
earthquakes
stop freaking silencing people. They need to let people just report, all right?
in Sichuan. They argue that local
Damn.
authorities knew the earthquakes could create serious risk in unstable areas but failed to
Look
take
at that rock
effective
hit it,
action.
and it didn't even break.
As
It almost
earthquake
did.
activity increased across China, authorities not only
That
failed to
gabion
put
wall
effective
didn't
disaster prevention
hold that.
plans
Look
in
at it
place,
go.
but also introduced a controversial policy that triggered strong public criticism. Recently, some users reported that when they opened the earthquake warning app developed by the Chengdu High-Tech Disaster Reduction Research Institute after an earthquake, iPhone users were shown a full-screen advertisement on the homepage. They had to manually tap skip before entering the app. Some users also found that the app offered VIP users an early warning information acceleration channel. The service claimed VIP users would receive warnings and special status reminders through priority delivery. Regular users had to watch the open
I'll tell you this right now, like that is scam as fuck. That's not the reason why my name is Clifford Johnston VIP. That is not the
advertisement before
reason.
viewing alerts. Under conditions such as silent mode, do not disturb mode, low battery, or phone calls, only VIP users could receive warning notifications while regular users might not receive them. This issue quickly drew criticism. Users wrote in the comment section, "This is unbelievable. They really are willing to make money from anything." This is
Yeah,
the first time I have heard of a weather
it's
warning service requiring
despicable.
VIP membership. It is ridiculous. It is difficult to accept that even emergency warnings have different levels. Some also mocked the policy, saying, "Fortunately, the phone does not shake during an earthquake. Automatically open Taobao or JD.com and place orders." Another said, "This is paying money to save your life." Some questioned whether the policy targeted iPhone users and said it encouraged people to buy cheaper domestic phones instead. In response to the criticism, staff members at the Chengdu High-Tech Disaster Reduction Research Institute changed their explanation, saying both iPhone and Android users would need to pay at 16 yuan per year. They said users without membership could still receive earthquake warnings for free, while VIP features only included functions such as adjusting warning thresholds. After users tested the app, they found that the opening advertisement had disappeared, but the membership payment page still appeared frequently. This was not the first time the app had faced criticism. In 2024, it was questioned after charging iPhone users a 10 yuan annual service fee. At the time, staff said unpaid users could still receive warnings, but paid users would receive alerts first from the warning servers. Several mainland Chinese media outlets also criticized the issue. They wrote, "Are life-saving warnings being divided into different levels? How can a public service product that provides earthquake warnings introduce paid features that treat users differently based on commercial logic?" When warning signs are divided into VIP priority and regular delayed access, it essentially turns a public safety resource into a commercialized and unequal service, turning something as basic as receiving life-saving information in time into a tiered system and even forcing free users to watch opening advertisement in exchange for a delayed warning. It's simply unacceptable. Facing the criticism, the Chengdu High-Tech Disaster Reduction Research Institute issued another statement and correction notice on July 15th. It said basic warning services are free for all users and alerts are sent equally. The institute said the VIP acceleration channel was an inappropriate product description and that there was no actual safety level system. It also said an internal review found that the institute had never prioritized paid users or limited free users' access. The institute denied the previous accusations. The year 2026 has been described in some Chinese folk beliefs as the red horse and the fire sheep year, a rare combination in the traditional Chinese zodiac calendar that some people associate with major changes or unusual events. Whether this belief has scientific support or not, a series of major events across China since the beginning of the year have led many people to feel that the year has been unusually turbulent. Since the start of the year, many regions have experienced extreme heat, along with frequent fires, explosions, and other serious incidents. In the second half of the year, Sichuan, Xinjiang, Qinghai, and other areas also experienced multiple strong earthquakes. The frequency of earthquakes in a short period has drawn widespread attention. At the same time, COVID-19 infections have increased again. According to official monitoring data, cases in southern China have risen and the positive rate at sentinel hospitals nationwide has continued to increase, raising concerns about renewed pressure on public health. The combination of natural disasters and disease outbreaks has added to public concerns about the future. Internationally, China-US relations have also continued to worsen. US President Donald Trump has recently made strong statements on issues including alleged Chinese influence operations, cybersecurity, and information theft. He has also reiterated a tougher approach towards communist governments. Rising external pressure has added uncertainty for China, which is already facing challenges including an economic slowdown, a weak property market, and strained local government finances. Overall, risk related to natural disasters, public health, the economy, and diplomatic relations appear to be emerging at the same time. Some observers say these developments reflect a combination of challenges rarely seen in China in recent years, with growing pressure on the economy, people's livelihoods, and the international environment. Some commentators have gone further, saying China has entered a period of broad decline in areas including the economy, diplomacy, and people's livelihoods. They argue that the repeated disaster across the country appear to reflect a wider crisis.
I want the American people to see what that ICE officer sees when he takes action. And I think it's going to help ICE with false.
Hold that thought. We're going to go down and we're going to watch some more earthquake stuff because that was a lot about earthquakes. So we're going to continue on par with some earthquakey quakes.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to a few out there. How's it going? Welcome back here.
The Earthmaster.
To a Monday, July 20th, 2026. 11:41 a.m. California time. Latest activity shows a 3.1 and a 3-pointer across the area of just outside of Turkey area. It looks like back over here, out probably around the Crete area, Sea of Crete, GNC region. A couple earthquakes there the last hour showing up. Some movement last night here right after the update off the coast of Canada. A 5.6 earthquake coming in to the northern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. We'll run over here and check this out. It's technically not on the Cascadia. It's on a strike slip boundary out here. We're just off of it, which is pretty close to the Explorer plate. There's 3 separate plates out here. The Juan de Fuca, you got the Gorda plate down here, and the Explorer plate up north. I believe the Explorer plate is the boundary is a little bit north here. I'm surprised they don't have it on their map. By the way, the USGS has updated their map to include subduction zones and strike slip boundaries out here. It's pretty cool. I just seen that this morning. A little upgrade, I would say. I request the next upgrade to include international data that's below the 4.5 threshold that they normally use. That would be really cool if they could include at least maybe 3.0 and above for international. I think that would be awesome. Pretty easy fix there. If you could, if you would include that into the public domain here, I think it'd be awesome. But they have revised their maps here. The pointy arrows indicating the subduction zone of the Cascadia subduction zone here, and even down south here, the Middle America Trench and so on. But that's pretty neat. I do like that. All right. So this 5-pointer came in just after the update last night, not on the Cascadia subduction zone, which is over here. But, close. Definitely close here, but within the Explorer plate, 5.6. Let's go see what the Canada folks there are reporting that magnitude. See what they have here real quick.
We just watched it was a 4 point something.
They have that, yeah, it's a 5.6 earthquake. And that is, in a zone that does get quite a bit of earthquake activity. Let me go back here. I want to look at their map. Where is it? There it is. Looks like there's a handful of maybe some aftershock activity here. This was 0647. So it looks like a few minutes following that earthquake last night. We had a 4.5. So it's it does look like it's north here of where the boundary exists between the Explorer and the Juan de Fuca. The Juan de Fuca and the Explorer plate boundary, I believe, is right across here. Because you can see a lot of smaller earthquake activity stretching across there. But it looks like they've had a number of earthquakes out there, mainly on the strike slip boundaries. A couple there along the Cascadia subduction zone. But I don't see anything big going on. There has been a little bit of tremor counts up here recently. Let me show you guys that. I'll go back over here to this slow slip event map here. This gives us a a good idea of what's going on down underneath the area of the Cascadia, which ultimately, stresses not only the surface area here, areas downstream, but also backstream here where the I think where we're seeing the earthquake activity. We got to go back in the last week to be able to see that movement way up north. So let's go here to last week, and then we'll search it real quick. And there's been a decent little cluster up here at the extreme northern end. See those red counts? Those are tremor counts that are occurring deep. This is a cross section of the Pacific Northwest, but this would include Vancouver area. If you were to slice it in half here, it would look the same. This is a subducting slab as it dives down underneath the North American plate, the overlapping plate here. You get some tremor counts that occur way down here in this area where the arrow is, and that's all great and dandy for relieving stress, because sometimes we will get some larger deep earthquake activity and get stuck down there, and then we'll see larger deep events, but that is bad news when we get tremor counts for this area, the red zone. That's where the stress builds because of the subducting slab. This doesn't slip along. This does not create slip. It builds up stress and strain for a megaquake, 9.0 or greater earthquake. So the tremor counts are occurring underneath Vancouver Island ranges, and our recent activity is due west here of where the tremor counts are occurring. So as this area is further being shoved underneath this region of the North American plate, we do get stress and strain quakes out here. So that's exactly what's going on. We've been getting tremor counts underneath this extreme northern end, and we really haven't had a whole lot of tremor counts at this area of the Cascadia in quite a while. So why? I think it's just, I think what it is it's just completely filling in to the point of where it's reaching the extremities here of the subduction zone for maximum pressurization. And that, we could see a big event out here anytime. I say that about the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia and other areas as well, because the time that is built up out here is very sufficient for a large earthquake. So some movement out there last night. I don't see anything else aside from that one little aftershock there that the Canada folks are showing from last night. Pacific Northwest, a handful of smaller quakes out here. I don't see anything big. Man, they've, I tell you what, they've definitely added more faults out here. Quite a bit more fault systems. I don't see, that's the other thing that it used to have. Remember, before they made a change here on the website, you could hover over this with the mouse cursor, and it would show you which fault system it is. They may be implementing that. I think it's, it's one step at a time. I know very well how coding can sometimes get hectic, but I'm sure they have a team of people that can work on their website. Me, I'm just a single solo writer getting this thing up and going out of chicken scratch here. So, but I did a little work on this app here last night. Before the live stream there, I brought it, or before the update last night, I brought it down and did a couple background updates on it. Seems to be stable, seems to be working good, updating every couple seconds or so. But I like the features out here. Looks cool. Extra maps or extra faults out here. Here's a Great Valley Thrust Fault that runs along the western side of the Sacramento and the San Joaquin Valley. But they need to add that hover over so we can see which fault system that is. That would be a huge upgrade for the USGS if they can get that going. All right, let's see here. Northern California, this is where the tremor counts have been elevated last night. It was actually a decent little event. Let's go over here to the last day. And we'll search that again. We had 483 epicenters. Southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, most of that underneath Northern California. I don't see any stress quakes out here. One from yesterday, but we'll continue to watch that. Bay Area, San Francisco, nothing else showing up here on the map, surprisingly. Or should we say not surprising, because that's how it's been here in the last few weeks. Pretty quiet across the San Francisco area. It's going to take a minute to get used to these lines, though. There's a lot of fault systems out here, but I do like it. It helps define, areas of interest when it comes to earthquake activity and which fault systems those may be occurring on. But they need to fix that hover over for sure. Anything about 2.5? We got one earthquake there outside of the Coso Junction. That's up north of Ridgecrest here from early this morning. But I don't see anything big going on across California for now. Up in the Yellowstone, a couple earthquakes up there on this fault fracture. We'll go double check the Yellowstone graph here real quick, see what we have. See if there's anything of any major interest out here that we need to look out for. There's one little earthquake here. Let me go back and check out different seismograph station here. Yeah, a little earthquake right here about 3-4 o'clock in the morning or so. That would be this little event right here about 4 o'clock in the morning, 0.9, a little 0.9, not even a 1 magnitude. So if that's a 0.9 and everything else looks crystal clear, well, Yellowstone's back to being quiet. It had a little spitter spatter event here a few days ago where it kicked off 20 or 30 earthquakes, but then it just went quiet again. Utah area fairly quiet aside from some smaller quake activity. Look at the New Madrid zone even up here. That's pretty cool. A couple different fractures out here of that intraplate boundary. Oil fields, no faults out here. Those are just earthquakes in the oil fields. That's what happens. The gas in the oil field boom created major earthquake events out there, and it continues to the day. One little earthquake, by the way, outside the New Madrid zone from looks like just about 2 o'clock my time this morning. 2.6. Eastern portion of the country quiet, not a whole lot going on. There is some faults out here they haven't got to yet. I'm guessing they will. But yeah, there's some faults out here that need to be added onto the map. So let's take a look here at the world view of things, see what we got cooking out here today. A little bit of activity north of the Philippines and between Taiwan and the Philippines there. Got 4-pointer. Ooh, that was too close. I try to slow down sometimes. My brain works very quickly. I've seen a couple comments saying, your mouse cursor makes me dizzy. Try not to do that. I'll try to slow it down a little bit. Like I say, sometimes when I get into explaining things, my brain just goes full speed ahead. But yeah, a couple earthquakes up there north of the Philippines, one earthquake here around the Japan area. And we got the typical clustering going on here across the Philippines and the Indonesia area. Nothing major going on there today. Same for the Vanuatu, Fiji, Tonga area down to the Kermadec Trench. Just a couple smaller quakes there in the 4 range. Alaska area, some older quake activity up there. Well, there's a 1.1 coming in right now, but that's a pretty small earthquake. We got some interesting activity over here, though, around the eastern side of the Caribbean plate. I do think the adjustment that we've seen here across Venezuela recently further stress this area back east here, east of where that, the decent large events took place there outside of Caracas to the west. Looks like things are starting to stir up out here. Port of Spain, 5.2 this morning, also 4.8. Caribbean plate's been getting quite a bit of strain around this area. Also up north recently as well with 5.1. That came following the events over here. So a lot of times the Middle America Trench here, which is the subduction zone, yes, you'll relieve the strain out here where that stress is building up, but also at the same time that does make an adjustment and further strains areas maybe nearby or maybe at a distance. But I think it strained this area due east of where the events were occurring here recently. That 7.3 and quite a few aftershocks as well. But down here across the Port of Spain, let's see here. When was our last decent size event out there? We're going to pull up 6.0 and above. And we're just going to go back a little distance here to the year 1000. Take a little time travel to that date. But it does, obviously it's not going to cover everything. Just what the USGS have kept here for records. I just want to see when our last decent event was out here. So there's the Port of Spain. 6.0 in this area. Looks like back in 2024. 7.3 2018. There's been a number of 6-pointers. 7-pointer. Doesn't look like they get much bigger than that. Over here, across those arrows, that's a subduction zone. So yes, they get a little bit bigger. Also up north here as well. I was looking at the Puerto Rico Trench here because that is normally considered a trough zone or a kind of a subducting area. But it is a little bit different compared to this region back over here. Transform boundary, other, divergent, subduction zone. All right, let's move on and see what we got here. So I'm just kind of watching this area. Back over here a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty neat. As far as the map upgrades go, let's see. Some movement down south here along the Pre-Chile Trench today. Looks like a 2.5 coming in. Overall, let's see what we got for our largest event. I don't think we've seen anything major going on. After midnight, it's going to go to this 5.2. The Scarborough, Trinidad and Tobago area. That's going to be back over here around the Port of Spain. But that's a little light here. I know we've got a couple of 5-pointers here in the last 24 hours, but only two or three low-grade 5s out here. Kind of a little on the quiet side for now. Be interesting to see here in the test, if you will, if this major coronal hole here stirs up any earthquake activity. I don't think it will, and the reason why I say that is because there's not a massive,
huge hole, but you see that blue blob right next to it. It could be an X flare
here.
Yeah, you see that? That could be an X flare.
These things shoot out magnetic lines from the coronal holes. This is not a sunspot. I've seen a couple.
Right. Hey, what are you doing?
A lot of disinformation out there. You got to be careful where you get your information from. A lot of people saying, "Yeah, look at this weird sunspot. It's a weird-looking sunspot." That's not a sunspot. That's a coronal hole. And I've seen bigger ones out here. This is just a little sliver of a one. Yes, it's got some length, but it's just a little sliver that's facing the planet here. This is south. This is north of the Earth-Sun plane. We just got this little bitty bit. I don't expect any major uptick of earthquake activity, and in fact, any major solar events as far as aurora activity. They're calling for a G1 class storm here. We'll check in a second, but this is just too thin of a little coronal hole to have any effect on the planet. Now the sunspots, yes, there's some sunspots coming around the bend. This one used to be a massive, well, it's still somewhat massive in terms of coverage area, but it's very weak. It's degraded. Not a whole lot of hope for that sunspot. There's another area back over here we're just getting a little glimpse of now. And even this one looks like it may be dying off as well. Remember that there was like a 3 sunspot group. There's a group of 3 sunspots here a couple weeks ago. These are the returning sunspots. They're coming back a lot weaker, exhausted, just not ready to put on a show whatsoever. But I need to see this one a little bit better before I make any subsequent decision on the forecast out here for flaring activity. Right now, doesn't look like much, but I can't see the backside of that sunspot in terms of the magnetic image here. But not impressed with this one. This area has kind of popped up out of the blue, and it really hasn't grown too much overnight. Looks about the same as what it did last night in the update, but we'll continue to watch that one. I still think flare threat right now is fairly low. Yeah, about 1% chance or less for an X flare, M flare at 25, C flare at 75% chance. And as you can see, well, it looks like we did have an M flare here. Where was that at? So he's got his news up here, news and updates. Did he update anything here? No, this is put out from yesterday. But it does look like there was an M flare. I wonder if it was from this area. let's go look at the movie here real quick and see what we got. Be able to spot that M flare pretty easily. Put this into motion here. Had to have been recently, so watch for a big spark out here, a little big, like a little flash here. Let's see if we can spot that M flare. Man, it's just kind of choppy today. Right there. So it did come from that sunspot that I was looking at. That said it pretty much popped out of the blue here. 4493. That produced a little M flare. Okay, a little impulsive one, but it's these ones that are starting to grow rapidly or that have just developed. This is literally a new sunspot that's popped up. You know, it's not the returning old sunspots here. That's technically a brand new one. So we'll watch that sunspot. Again, that's 4493. And Aurora forecast, they're thinking maybe a G1 class storm here as we head towards the 22nd time period, UTC the 22nd. I don't really expect much here. It's not tonight. It's not tomorrow night. It's probably going to be on Wednesday sometime. Moon's starting to thicken up out there a little bit. All right, let's see what we got here for any close approach asteroids. See if anything else is in the news today. Got this one coming in 18 lunar distances. That's way out there, actually. I don't see anything of close proximity. This one's coming in 4.6 lunar distances, but even so, that's a decent distance. I don't see anything of any concern out here. This here is the number I'm looking for, 44 lunar distances. And then if I see something close or whatnot, then we'll investigate a little bit more. It's pretty neat. You can look at these, like this one here. You click on this site, and it shows you the T-minus 4 days, 14 hours, and 4 seconds before it makes its closest approach there to the planet. And in this case, it's going to be 4.4 lunar distances. So the moon is in the blue here, this blue line. And that's a ways out there if you really think about it. But it's pretty neat. I do like this little graph here in this website. I can't remember exactly who sent me this. I've seen this website before. I look at hundreds and hundreds of these websites and gather information that I think might be useful here on this channel. But yeah, I kind of forgot about this one here. But this is definitely one that I want to keep an eye on. And it's got some cool stuff to look at. Artemis 2. Size comparisons and whatnot. It's pretty neat. All right. 72 meters. Well, oh, that's pretty cool. What if 2026 OD struck Earth? It'd be the equivalent of the Tunguska event. That asteroid that exploded in the air explosion. Pretty neat. There's a path of it. Heliocentric event or asteroid there, as far as the orbit goes. All right, let's go to the Storm Prediction Center. See what we got here for severe weather today. We've got a lot of monsoonal moisture coming into California, but nothing's coming out of the clouds. A lot of moist air up above the surface, but we don't have any, no way to tap into that. If we had a low pressure cut off here, it would elevate the uplift. Maybe the mountains here might get some thunderstorms today, but in the Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Valley, Bay Area, should be pretty dry and hot with cloud cover. Tornado threat, big time potential here today. So just a heads up, the Storm Prediction Center has this in a hatched area, indicating the potential for strong, damaging tornadoes today. So pay attention. Keep your weather radio on. Same for the wind. Those wind chimes potentially could blow away with the strong potential for wind damage today and some large hail. For tomorrow, let's see what we got here for the Tuesday outlook. Shifts a little bit further east, but I can already tell some decent potential there for wind and maybe some tornado activity. They'll probably enhance that tomorrow, maybe add a little upgrade to this area, but Looks like all forms of severe weather on the table for next couple days for this area. All right. Let's see here. What else we got? Let's go here to tropical tidbits here. Let's see what we got here for this tropical system. See if it's going to make any gain any momentum. It's not looking favorable that this will turn into anything major or even anything noteworthy. It's going to remain, looks like a tropical storm for a little bit, then a tropical depression by the weekend here over Texas. Yeah, it's probably going to bring some rainfall for sure. Tropical storm watches up in effect here across the coast of Florida and Mississippi down in the Louisiana area. But this is supposed to stay a very low-grade tropical storm. Now the one out in the eastern Pacific, that crazy. I wish it would hold together a little bit and bring us some rainfall. That would be awesome. You know, in Southern California, I think when was it? A few years ago, it was Tropical Storm Hillary, if I recall, dumped a whole bunch of rain over California. It'd be nice if we got a little bit in Northern California. I've never felt hurricane rain up here. You know, I've been down along the Gulf, Texas and Louisiana when hurricanes come in, but over here in California, Northern California, it's neat to get this tropical moisture up here, but it'd be nice if we had a little bit of rainfall with it. But no strengthening. The waters are cool, much cooler up here, so that's why it's rapidly degrading and weakening. We'll put this into motion here, see if we got any other storms to watch here. Eastern Pacific remains very active with multiple systems. It's like every day there's a new system forming off the coast of Mexico in a line of convective activity, and that's what happens when we get these warming waters out here with the El Nino. Way warmer. And just going to see hurricanes out here. Got to watch out for Hawaii though, because that's that's when we can get those storms hitting the Big Island and the Hawaii chain. Let me go over here and look at the regions here real quick. See if any of these get close to Hawaii. Excuse me. I got a frog in my throat. This one here, weakening, going north. There's Hawaii out here. It's looking at this tropical system. Look at that. It just pop. It was like popcorn. You got to watch these though, because one of these could strengthen and remain strong and head towards the Hawaii Islands. But I don't see anything near term that's forecast to head out that way. Alrighty, I think that's about it. Seismograph stations here look pretty quiet. A lot of people messaged me overnight. I got to get back to you guys, let you know that you're on the list. I've seen a bunch of emails this morning. People are emailing me, letting me know that they're interested in the app. I'm making a list of those that are interested first, and I'll probably, once I decide on what I'm going to do with this, and those people will be the first to be notified when I release this app, the public version here. This is just the beginning. I'm probably going to try and work on it a little bit today. And if I do, then that means I got to take it down from the live stream, work on the code in the background here, and then test it out a couple times before I put it back up on the live stream. But everything seems to be stable. I don't see any issues going on at the moment, so that's always a good sign when a developing app is stable. But it's a work in progress, and it will continue to be in progress for a number of weeks at least while I integrate many more features into this program. All right, have a good one. We'll see you guys out here for the Monday night update. Enjoy your Monday. Stay cool.
I want the American people to see what that ICE officer sees when he takes action, and I think it's going to help ICE with false media that's out there about them.
But then
Mr.
why did
Roman,
the administration roll back what the Biden administration is trying to do to get body cameras and all?
That's a question above me. I'm just saying, when I came back, and then when Democrats shut the government down, I was a part of that negotiation team up on the Hill. And they kept going to Minnesota. All the mistakes they say happened in Minnesota. I don't think there's a lot of the mistakes they claim in Minnesota. A lot of them were, I don't think, mistakes. But one thing they asked was, we want body cameras. I said, well, there's money, $120 million in the bill you're holding up for me to buy the body cameras. So the reason there's not body cameras nationwide right now, because they shut the government down. And anybody doesn't believe that, look it up. Now that we have the funding, body cameras have been purchased. As of last week, they were training the trainers. Body cameras are being deployed throughout the country, training the trainers so they can go to a Boston field office and train everybody. Here's how you use it. Here's how long you need to keep the tape. And it just wasn't the funding for the cameras either. We had to hire a lot of people to handle the FOIAs, because I'm sure you don't FOIA camera every day, right? So we got to hire people to handle the FOIAs. We got in the storage capability of holding millions and millions of video. That's expensive, but now we got the money that's being implemented.
You just said that in Minnesota, what happened wasn't a mistake with the shootings that we saw.
I said Democrats claim all these mistakes were made, and when I sat down with them, they said, well, they want a mask off. No, we're not taking masks off.
You're saying it's not a mistake. Do you have an update on the investigation that the American people don't know
Look,
about?
I went to Minnesota and I said from day one, it was not a perfect operation. There were several chains of command. I had a problem with the targeting. I went out there and made changes. I brought in additional internal affairs agents in. We created one chain of command. And I see a lot of people out there saying that, we surrendered Minnesota. No, we didn't. We got agreements that keeps that city safer, keeps the officers safer, and keeps the aliens safer. Because the more aliens we can arrest in the safety and security of a jail means less criminal aliens being released to the street. So we were able to go up there and continue the operation, but we had unprecedented agreements where less criminal aliens are hitting the street, which is good for that state, good for that city, and safer for our officers. That's a win across the board.
Mr. Roman, on the ICE officer in Maine, is there any more clarity on how he got his job, considering the vetting concerns that his wife has raised? Are there potential changes coming to the vetting process of ICE agents?
That's a question for ICE. That's under investigation. I'm sure that part now is part of the investigation. We'll let the investigation play out. I'm not going to comment on the investigation. This is ongoing.
The New York Times found a review that 550
Mark Wayne
people
Mullen as the DHS secretary. What would you describe as the difference between his management style and the management style of his predecessor?
And let me say this. Someone shared an X post this morning. There are people out there who want to attack this current administration. They don't think we're doing enough. There's an X post this morning that someone shared with me. Someone named Marianne or somebody. The ICE was arresting 3,000 aliens a day last year. No, not once. Not a single time did we arrest 3,000 aliens. And now they say we're arresting 2,000. We're hitting about 2,000 pretty steadily. Like I said this weekend, I looked at the data. Arrests are up about 40% over the same time period that we've been funded. Now, I've been frank from the beginning. Numbers were down for a few months because the department was shut down. Of course, numbers are going to go down when targeting less and officers, less overtime and all those other reasons. When you shut, the government down, there's going to be less due. So, and I was very honest from day one. The numbers were down 12 to 16%, but now the numbers are trailing up 40% because we are fully funded. I thought they're doing their job. But I'm really tired of the false narratives going out there about what this administration is doing. The numbers are up. Last month, June, highest numbers of arrests in the history of the agency.
How many?
Then I see people say, wow, you're combining CBP numbers or Coast Guard. No, I didn't. The numbers I quoted this weekend were ICE numbers. So I wish people would do a little bit of research before they start attacking this administration, what we're doing right now. Our numbers are higher than ever been. And I'm sick and tired of people saying we're not doing enough. That's an insult to every ICE agent that's strapping up every day, working 6 and 7 days a week to get this done. It's an insult. These men and women are acting professionally. They're out there making record numbers. And people want to question numbers. You know, I guess that's your right. But let's compare facts.
I just have a question about the difference in the management style of those.
Me and Mark Wayne want to get along well, and you know, he cares about the mission. We serve different roles. ICE and CBP reports to Mark Wayne Mullen. I'm here. I help Stephen Miller. We develop strategies that send down to the programs for implementation. So we got different roles. But I think Mark Wayne Mullen's doing a good job.
But sir, should FBI investigate these ICE agents if they confront people? That is what the New York Times is saying. That's what their reporting is. They have something that 550 people had charges brought against them for assaulting federal officers. Of the more than 400 cases that were resolved, nearly half had unraveled.
You know what's going to help though? The body cameras. They didn't have body cameras. A lot of these confrontations happen. Again, I think body cameras are going to help. Look, I'm not going to comment on these investigations.
So that's the answer, not FBI investigating it, is what you're saying.
As far as I know, there's been no change in policy. The FBI and DHS just responded to that story and didn't agree with it. Again, I'm not in the loop on that. I can just tell you from my experience, FBI has always been involved in shooting investigations. HSI, they're the criminal investigation part of ICE. They do the majority investigations in 111, which is assault and beating an officer.
How are the training procedures changing? You talked about training the trainers. How are those training procedures changing? And
they're not changing. The trainers for the cameras. How do you operate the camera? What's the requirements? When do you turn it on? When do you turn it off? How quick do you need to store the data? How long is the data being stored? So there's a lot of work into this, and training the trainers. Once they get fully trained, they go to the field office with the equipment, and they implement and deploy it and tell people, here's how you use it, and here's how you control it.
Are there
so what's the timeline then for every immigration agent to have a body camera?
As soon as possible, if that my way.
So you're satisfied with the training right now of ICE agents? Nothing needs to be improved.
There's always room for improvement. That's a loaded question. There's always room for improvement. Things change all the time. FBI updates their training. DEA updates their training. Every police department updates their training. Because ICE used to, look, you can never be overtrained. I wish there was more training.
I think American people want the answer of when every ICE agent will be wearing a body camera. I know you said as soon as possible, but is there a timeline floating around within?
That's a question for ICE. I know they got the deployment schedule, and I know they got the equipment. That's a question for ICE. I'm not in the weeds that deep.
Is the administration required to turn on their cameras at all times during a traffic stop?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's the consequence if they don't?
More about the quantity of ICE agents over the quality of the agents?
Say that again?
Is this administration more concerned about the number, the quantity of ICE administrations that are taking place over the quality?
I can't speak for everybody in the administration, but quality agents are very important. So it should be all. You won't give somebody a badge and gun; they need to be the best they can be.
So are there going to be reevaluations then of the hiring?
That's a question for ICE.
Is there any other procedure or protocol on the ground changing? Stops.
There's already, the director of ICE decided that there needs to be at least one body camera on the scene. And again, I'm a big supporter of the body cameras. And as more body camera gets out there, they all happen.
That's the only change.
But let's be clear. You can attack the men and women at ICE all you want. It comes down to one simple fact. These people fail to comply with law enforcement. Even some of the major chiefs in this country who don't necessarily agree with this administration says you always comply with law enforcement. But the hateful rhetoric that ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. I see these signs that resist. ICE are let's abolish them. They're fascists. When you keep that hateful rhetoric up for a year and a half, there's going to be that percentage of that population that's going to be emboldened to take action because they're not a real law enforcement agency. I should resist them. All they had to do is simply comply with law enforcement. If you don't like what law enforcement did to you, then go to the courts, sue, call the ACLU, do whatever you want to do. But you should always comply with law enforcement. If they did, they'd be alive today. Now, I'm not going to comment on the investigation itself. We'll wait for it to play out. This is about complying with law enforcement, and a lot of the negative, hateful. And I said this a year ago. If a hateful rhetoric doesn't stop, there will be bloodshed. And unfortunately, I was right. And I'll tell you something else. It's not over yet. unless they keep attacking and miscommunicating what ICE does every day, calling them Nazis and comparing ICE to the Nazi regime. Are you kidding me?
Disrespectful to everyone that's still living.
Convinced, there's going to be that populace that's just going to embolden to do something stupid.
It's completely balderdash.
I'm afraid that we're going to bury an ICE agent. I'm afraid I'm going to hand another folded flag to a spouse or a child of an ICE agent for simply doing his job. And for any member of Congress to keep attacking ICE and calling them fascists and Nazis, I said it 1,000 times. If they're a Nazi for enforcing the law, what's that make them? They wrote the law. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws they wrote, and that they appropriate us money to enforce. Now, I'll say it once again. If ICE agents act inappropriately or illegal, they'll be held accountable, just like they were held accountable in Minnesota. Everybody, guys, ICE agents are mom and dads too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day to do this job. And it's just not attacking the ICE agents, it's attacking their spouses and children, and no one knows that better than me. I can't even go get a quart of milk at a grocery store without a security detail. Why? Because I'm enforcing laws in this country. It's pathetic and it's disgusting. Thanks, Tom.
Good afternoon. I'm James Barnacle, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI New York Field Office, here joined by the
Let's not take the most extreme members of the DSA area and talking about no borders, no jails, et cetera. But
you can't have this conversation without talking about, you wanted to exclude the extreme positions.
Yeah, don't focus on the extreme. Let's just focus on the other stuff. But here's the reality of the situation for the Democrat Party. We are now starting to see very prominent Democrats who are either jumping ship or are ready to jump ship.
So I'm not living in communist America. I mean, I know that the talking point is that, well, it's not communism, it's socialism. Okay, I've read the quotes from the DSA platform, from their own mouths. Don't tell me I'm not seeing what I am seeing. And DSA, again, they...
And I think we all know who this is. Even he's starting to get a little displeased of what's happening to the Democrat Party as a whole. And by the way, since we're on YouTube, let's just use Google sources to see if you do have components of communism in DSA, Democrat Socialist of America. This is AI Overview. It's Google. The Democrat Socialist of America is a big tent organization that includes Democrat Socialist, okay, Social Democrats, okay, and Marxist. So as far as when people get upset when you tie communism or communist ideologies into DSA, we're on Google. Even Google is saying you do have Marxists in there. While it's not a traditional communist party, its internal factions, some leadership elements, and organizational ties strongly overlap with communist philosophy and international groups. And again, here is the internal critique specifically talking about communist ideologies.
So I'm not living in communist America. I mean, I know the talking point is that, well, it's not communism, it's socialism. Okay, I've read the quotes from the DSA platform, from their own mouths. Don't tell me I'm not seeing what I am seeing.
Now look, here's the thing. You are entitled to your opinion as an American. Some Democrats and voters do like this. They do like communist ideologies, the DSA ideologies, but for a lot of other Democrats, maybe moderates, maybe the ones in office, they're gonna probably have to figure out if they're going to defend these talking points, align with these talking points, or just jump ship. And this probably won't shock you, but it does look like Fetterman might be one of those Democrats to jump ship.
You've said that if the Democratic Party becomes officially and overtly hostile to Israel, that might cause you to leave the party.
Well, candidates run on a platform, and if that becomes the Democratic platform, that we will now ever vote for any aid and will turn our back on Israel, then that makes me to make that decision as really what a Democrat should stand for, or being a part of my party for me. If I change my party spontaneously right now, my views and my votes aren't going to change.
Senator Fetterman has already been very outspoken as far as his displeasure with some of the talking points coming out of the DSA, more left-leaning talking points. But Senator Fetterman also faces a statistic like this. 52% of Pennsylvania voters would like to see Fetterman leave Democrat Party. That includes Republican voters as well. A lot of Republicans and conservatives seem to like Fetterman simply because he's not super far left-leaning. But still, it makes total sense that Fetterman is indicating he might just become an independent, since the stats and polling reflect in Pennsylvania that seems to be what the voters want anyway.
I think to boil this down to just insurgent versus establishment overlooks what many of these people are running on. They're simply beyond insurgency here. I mean, you've got people out there winning primaries that want to abolish borders, abolish ICE, abolish prisons, abolish the police, abolish the United States Senate. This is well outside the bounds of normal political discourse, and it's all happening, in the Democratic Party. I don't think the Democratic Party leadership understands. They've already been overwhelmed, and it's just a matter of time before these views become the mainstream platform, and that's what.
And Scott Jennings is reading between the lines. These are people who won, not like famous social media influencers or people who tried to win their race and now they have a podcast or they're thrown on MSN for whatever reason. No, he's talking about people who won their primary and are pretty much guaranteed to win against whoever they're running against. We're going to be seeing them on the main stage here pretty soon, especially for representatives. Now, as far as senators getting on that level, having those types of talking points, not necessarily as common, but this is about to be very common. We're about to see a lot of people making these talking points on the national level. So Scott Jennings is asking the question, when did this become normal, and what are we doing here?
They're going to end up running on in 2028 as well.
Well, I said, privatize Social Security, put that in the stock market and see how it does. If it crashes,
would have done great had they done it back in 05.
Until it doesn't, right? Until it doesn't, which is what happened in the 1930s when people were struggling. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is a moment sort of like we had in the 1930s in America, where people are tired of the way things are going for them, and we're going to see a transformation in the way our politics is done, and hopefully we'll see a Democrat.
I agree. The anti-Israel, the anti-Jewish rhetoric, it does remind me of the 1930s. I couldn't agree with you more.
There is no question that the anti-fascism is also rising, and the fascists were on our shore back then. And what we're committed to now is fighting socialists. I mean, the idea of having health care that everyone
communist, socialist, very antithetical to the American system.
Are they the same or are they different?
Are they same or are they different? Again, that's why I advise you guys, please go and do your research. Do not only listen to your favorite YouTubers, Republicans, MAGA, conservative. Please just stop. Go on the internet and look up the platform, and when you are contested with a talking point like this, are they the same or are they different, you can go on Google. We're on YouTube. We use Google here, the best platform on the internet. It's literally the very first thing that pops up. A big tent party with certain ideologies, Marxist, and other affiliations that do align with communism. So at definition, yes, we do have separation between socialism and communism, but on a party level, there seems to be some unification there.
I think socialism, TVA, where I'm from, East Tennessee, was built by socialism. The TVA was built by it. Oak Ridge was built by it. Factories were built by it. Alcoa
built
was built
by socialism?
America, absolutely. Government workers, 90% of the people that built those
having a government is not the same as having socialism.
Well, so if it's not the government doing the work and the government building things for the people and then keeping ownership of it, if that's not what socialism is, then what is it? You tell me. If it's not direct employees building the
so you're saying any level of or any amount of government is socialism.
I think your guys are actually.
We're not
the
ones
ones
that
label all this stuff.
You have a whole fact.
So I do find this rather interesting that Scott Jennings is now having to hold the burden of what's happening with the DSA when Scott Jennings is simply pointing out, you guys, you are the ones as a party who is running on this. Explain yourself, please.
Party called Democratic Socialists of America who are running on things well beyond basic government services. They're running on absolute and total radical anarchy that is antithetical to the American.
Let me just ask you, let's not take the most extreme members of the DSA area and talking about no borders, no jails, etc. But
you can't have this conversation.
And here's the thing, I'm a little shocked Jake Tapper did say that. Let's not take the extreme members, because those are people who are already won or might win. So again, as far as what you might consider extreme, that can already be a little up to you, if you will. But to ignore people who are making these talking points and just focus on the others, yeah, a little shocking from Jake Tapper, but it is what it is. Let me know how you feel about this, and let me know if we should be paying attention to everything and everyone. I do think we need to be careful about definitions, though, because even for Republicans and the conservative movement, there are aspects of socialism that are utilized in today's American government. But what Scott Jennings is arguing is we cannot ignore the extremes that seem to be popping up in a movement that's becoming a lot more popular, and pretending like there isn't some sort of unification or alignment with like communist, socialist, far left-leaning, progressive type talking points. And in America, it seems like there are plenty of voters who do find that popular and do find it to be something they agree with. So of course you're going to point out there are people who find it popular. Now, I already talked about this yesterday, but we have to replay this clip.
But, you know, there's this conversation about Jesus being a socialist. And I listen to the Reverend's words, and, you know, you hear the television turn on, and they're talking about this and that. But when I think about where my first political consciousness was formed, it actually didn't.
And just so you are aware, from the Catholic viewpoint, we're talking about a rejection of Jesus being a socialist, let alone getting into the communism debate or talking point. I have no idea who AOC is talking about. I already went into detail as far as what this was all about and the mainstream Christian perspective, conservative Christian, Catholic perspective, and Orthodox, by the way. Let me know how you feel about this, but I show you this to show you guys the different talking points can sound extreme and then non-extreme and then extreme. It's hard to not pay attention to stuff like this. How can you not pay attention as a Christian when AOC says, was Jesus a socialist? Also, we all need health care. Now, for some Democrats, they made it very clear they don't even care what the talking points are, just win as a Democrat and maybe we can just all hash it out.
Fetterman was suggesting. And I got one more question on this topic because I do want to talk about AI data centers with you. But Bernie Sanders has endorsed like 90 candidates. There was an analysis by CNN today that of the 60 who have already run for their elections, 42 of them won, including 10 out of 16 federal elections. Are you worried that all of this division within your party is diverting spending in primaries that would otherwise be used in general elections?
Well, I think it's important that we elect enough Democrats to the next Congress. I'm hopeful we'll take a majority of, 230, whatever it is, that we don't have to rely on the votes of those 4 or 5 or 6 DSA people that might serve in that Congress.
Okay.
I know that many of them have threatened not to elect Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker. And I think to make sure that we do, we need to elect a big enough Democratic majority that we can make sure that we don't need to count on their votes for anything.
Okay.
Yeah, this is getting very serious. I mean, for some Democrats, it's like, okay, they're a Democrat, I hope they win. And for others, they are already preemptively planning what happens if they do win. On paper, they're a Democrat, but also they want to push back against Hakeem Jeffries. We're a little more moderate, they're not. What do we do here? But still, this is going to happen on the national level. It is expected we're going to be seeing them as representatives, maybe as senators. It's looking a lot better right now for Republicans because it turns out these talking points are not popular. And again, it's very easy to win a New York City type race on these talking points. Try winning a New York State type race where you have some of the heaviest pockets of Republicans and conservatives in the entire country representing portions of upstate New York and even in Long Island. Now, speaking of Bernie Sanders,
we're on our way to Lansing, Michigan for a rally. We did a great event last night in Detroit. Tonight we're going to be in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Look, what's going on in the Democratic primary here in Michigan is not complicated. The Democratic establishment, the super PACs, the billionaires, AIPAC, are pouring huge amounts of money into the establishment candidate to try to beat Abdul El-Sayed. So what this campaign is really about is whether we create a government and an economy that works for all of us, whether we maintain the status quo, which is failing. So I would hope all over this country, people stand up, support Abdul El-Sayed.
And by the way, keep in mind, the opponent that Bernie Sanders is endorsing or has endorsed and backing has already said he doesn't back Chuck Schumer and actually backs Senator Chris Van Hollen, the guy who went down to El Salvador to go see Kilmar Obrego Garcia. So let me know how you feel about this. It's getting rather interesting how Bernie Sanders is supporting an individual who's already indicating they're prepared to fight back against other senators, a big one, Mr. Chuck Schumer, who is unpopular in the Democrat Party, but definitely does not align with these types of talking points.
No, my concern is I've done this since 1984. My concern is I think a lot of the rhetoric that you see every day, especially in sanctuary cities and at these protests that you resist. Members of Congress saying ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. I actually think that emboldens some people to say, I'm not going to comply with ICE. And I think no matter what people think of ICE, no matter what you think of immigration law, you should always comply with law enforcement.
And here's the thing, this is becoming a lot more popular, especially with this more left-leaning talking point. Like, Senator Fetterman would never say that ICE is not a legitimate law enforcement agency, which is why he has been told, and many will say, well, that means he's not a Democrat. So the reason why I show you this clip, though, is because even from Tom Homan's experience, and if you have been paying attention, this is super common. I mean, back in 2025, it was like the biggest news story ever if a member of Congress made this comment. Now you hear it so much, it's almost like you have become desensitized. And by the way, for some individuals who have made these comments and have been really big people to push back against ICE, Congressman Dan Goldman, this wasn't even enough for him to win his race over in New York City. To give you an idea, for some of these Democrats who even make these talking points, that is not enough to win you your race.
So you don't want to abolish the Senate? United States Senate, because that's what Article 1 is.
The United States Senate is an undemocratic institution. It gives more representation to people in smaller states than to the 30 million people in California.
So you've got the House of Representatives, which is population-driven, and then you've got the Senate. So every state, if you're a small state, you still get 2 senators, even though you only get maybe 1 congressman, in order to make all of the states have fair representation. So you say, I'm just confused.
When you ask normal Americans if Congress...
Okay, dude, and this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. So there's a difference between the Senate and the House of Representatives. What he's trying to describe is the House of Representatives, but he's talking about it like the Senate. And, like, there's a reason why they're separate, but kind of, like, equal in a sense. But, like one is based on the population, House of Representatives, and Senate is based on Electoral College. Am I wrong, or am I, like? And then we'll look at it in a second.
And the Senate and our political system is working for them. Most people are very unhappy with the political system, and they say it's not working for them.
And this right here is why Scott Jennings said we cannot just ignore the extreme. Let's actually pay attention to what's going on. Because I'm sure, very reluctantly, some of you might actually agree, as a conservative or Republican, and for Democrats, you might say, I don't feel proper representation in my state, even though my party might be running my state. But at the same time, when you look at, okay, how do we fix that? Get rid of the Senate. That is why Scott Jennings is saying we should probably be paying attention to the fullness of what's being presented here, not just the nice talking points.
All right, Mr. Nice Talking Points. So here we go. There we go. Didgeridoo. All right. For real, though, right here, we got the House of Representatives. The House has 435 voting members. Seats are divided among the 50 states using the decennial. That's butchered, but decennial census to ensure districts have roughly equal populations. Roughly. Each representative serves a 2-year term, meaning the entire chamber is up for election every 2 years. If a seat becomes vacant, it remains empty until a special election is held. And then the Senate has 100 members. The Constitution guarantees every state exactly 2 senators, no matter how many population you have, giving smaller states equal legislative weight in this chamber. What is this dude trying to say, that like it's wrong that the small state has equal representation? Like, that is completely, like, that is fucking insane to sit here. That's I hate cussing, but that is beyond my comprehension how he's gonna sit here. And it's like he's never taken civics, and like he's sitting there doing that. And like this is like in U.S. like history you learn this, not even civics. More smaller states have to listen to this guy and be like, oh my god, the world's gonna end. And it's like, no, it's just idiots that are trying to take control of the wheel. We gotta get mental asylums great again to make sure that these idiots with these low IQs can't go up here and manipulate people for their own good. Shit. Bring back logic. Talk about merit. Where's logic in this? Oh my god. Okay, this is obviously logical because every state will eventually have millions of people, right? Eventually? California? That's the point. So, I mean, like, goodness, we cross that bridge when we come to it. Like, year 3050. Anyway, senators serve 6-year terms, and they are divided into 3 groups so that the elections occur continuously. So there's never a, no, there's not one there, except for when they choose to not show up and do their jobs, like Nick Shirley saw. Does Democrats should be held in fraud for, we're paying them to sit on their ass? No, I guess not. We're not doing that anymore. I can't take this. Save America Act, vote yes. Anyway, and they are divided into 3 groups. I just read that anyway. Contested every 2 years. If a Senate seat becomes vacant, the state's governor typically appoints an interim senator to serve until the next scheduled election. And so that's pretty much how that happens. And we got people like this in here
of the United States,
fucking dealing with this shit.
And we think about our proudest moments.
I think about how the fuck you got here.
In U.S. history, I think of times like when...
Do I talk about like, can you even say the Star Spangled Banner? Like, do you know who wrote it? Like this is like
ordinary people
shit.
rose up and
like,
they changed the Constitution to
ordinary people rose up. We were like considered criminals. We were fighting for our lives. He has no idea.
To abolish slavery. To
oh my god! And he just jumped the whole fucking like. He jumped the whole founding and started at the slavery part. What is his problem?
Give women the right to vote.
Everyone's proud of that.
Oh, now we're going to the right to vote for women. This is the most left I've ever... I don't even understand how that has anything to do with it, dude. Like, I mean, I'm voting for more, like, restrictions on voting because people like you are over here trying to say that, like, the most important time in history is not the beginning, when we were founded. Like, I love this shit. Like, this is amazing.
But back in those moments...
Whoa.
Oh, whoa. Like, 250th year anniversary shouldn't be tarnished by this guy trying to say stupid shit.
Hold on.
Yeah, I get what he's trying to say about, oh, like, these are great accomplishments, but you don't understand, like, those wouldn't even have been accomplishments if, like, we didn't fight for our lives.
For Democrats, being overly patriotic or referring to these moments in history could possibly cost you an election, and it's not popular in the Democrat Party.
Like the Civil War, he didn't say how many people died, and that is like almost 1 million people. It was like 600,000 people died, and that's like almost like half of like the continent's population died in that war. And you're going to sit here, and like that's like numbers rivaling the Black Plague in Europe, and you're going to sit here like. As in, like, the Black Plague was 1/3 of Europe's population decimated. Like, ours was, like, half for that one war to set those people free, and you're going to sit there and act like that was, like, a great... That's not a good look on us, bro. That's terrible that we did that. I mean, we did it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's just terrible it had to end in that bloodshed. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, the time scar that left? How many more beans that, like, could have been made? Like, if we could have just figured our shit out, and like how we're heading that direction now, because people like him, and I hate being the guy to point the finger, because eventually 3 will be pointing back. But like, honestly, this shit right here, I can't allow to sit this and like at my heart of hearts. Like, this commenter right here is like extremely naive to think those things were okay to be said like that.
That's according to CNN and multiple polling outlets. As far
And this
as
is all on the fly. This is not scripted, not even watched, not
like
at all.
being
so
an
sorry.
American, are
Little hot
patriotic.
take, but I
For the
don't care,
Democrat
bro.
Party, we're talking about a split of how many Democrats are patriotic versus non-patriotic.
I used to think I
Currently,
was
for Democrats,
both, a bridge of both, but
right now,
no, I'm
being
not
overly
partying right now. We're not
patriotic could
partying
cost
right
you
now,
your
bro. Everyone's
election.
dying.
And please go and fact check this. I don't like to create fake hype, but I am questioning. Now we're referring to one of the most patriotic moments in American history for a talking point.
Those were considered radical movements because those people dared to say we need transformative change in the
That was a radical movement. You think that was a radical movement, or do you think that there wasn't a lot of mental help back then to like be able to be like, okay, dude, these people are crazy and they still want to have people as like property and they can't talk about it? Like, we didn't even get to that point yet. Like, you're not even sitting there at a debate, bro. Like, where are we now at a culture level versus then? You're not even getting to the debate floor, bro. You're sitting there and like, you're like making like stupid I'm gonna call them, as I see them, mandami statements, bro. And you're gonna sit there with like fake fucking shit, and I'm gonna smear it all over your face with it, bro, because you're not. Every word that came out of his mouth was disrespect to every veteran that I know. They'd be sad to see this guy over here. This is fucking depressing.
Well, we struggle to become a more perfect union, but I just want to ask you again, do you want to abolish the United States
what a
Senate?
struggle.
Because you said you approve of Article 1, but then you said you didn't think the Senate works.
We think that the Senate should be reformed, that we should have a more democratic government system.
So the founding father wasn't good enough. The founding, they knew that if you can't figure it with 100 people, what's the point of having more or less? And that same goes for the House of Representatives. Look at how crazy it's gotten now. I mean, and they're only there for 2 years. Look at it. It says over here that they elect every 2 terms, and the others is conceded every 2 years. So it's like, it seems to me that they're pretty even. Like, I don't like, they thought about it and they're like, if we can't figure it out in the Senate with like the less members, and like the House has this many opinions, and we can't come to consensus on something in our country, like if we lost it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reforming that. That's fucking perfect. You don't need much more than that, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
that's long-term change that we're seeking.
That's like,
and in the
it's
short
pretty
term,
simple,
we're focused
bro.
on
Like, keep it
issues
simple.
like affordability, like freezing the rent, which we've just done in New York.
Like what's the point?
Okay, so
like,
another
why
observation
do you
I
need
have
more
about the
for
DSA and these
Senate?
more progressive left-leaning individuals is that they are very public. They're not shy about how they feel. They're actually very proud about how they feel. They're going on national television. They're going on Fox News, and they're going on CNN. They are everywhere. So keep in mind, we're talking about a movement that has a lot of momentum, not necessarily on a massive national level. Stats and polling show none of their talking points are really that popular outside of the Democrat Party, but still in the Democrat Party, it's gaining some steam and momentum. So let me know how you feel about this. I hope I was as fair as possible in representing all the different sides. Please start fact-checking your favorite YouTubers, your favorite media. Go on the internet and look this stuff all up. Very crucial. I highly advise you do that. It takes 2 seconds. Thank you again so much for everything. God bless all of you. Make sure to
Things with Iran have escalated. Look at this.
Escalating attacks in the Middle East, the U.S. conducting a 9th straight night of strikes against Iran.
Well, we feel very badly, but you know, those great people, those great patriots are out there fighting that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily.
9th consecutive night of U.S. strikes hit Iran overnight. According to CENTCOM military command centers, a variety of surveillance positions, missile and drone launching sites, along with other targets were hit.
They've got some missiles, they've got some drones, they've got some manufacturing ability, not much. We control the strait. They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens. But we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably 3.
President Trump told Fox News last week that if Iran doesn't reach a deal, strikes will escalate this week to hit power plants and bridges. Iranian officials have indicated that some new proposals are being discussed.
Discussed.
Proposals have been put forward by the mediators. They have been conveyed to us, and we have received them. But for now, allow me not to go into details. What can I confirm? That in recent days, the diplomatic apparatus has remained active, and that ideas have indeed been conveyed to us by several mediators.
Now, does anybody really believe that after a 90-day ceasefire, where Iran was given a deal that many people criticized Trump for and said was just going to strengthen them, that by breaking that deal and throwing it away, that there's going to be some new negotiation that comes out of this and is somehow better for everybody?
The Iranians are saying publicly the memorandum of understanding is suspended. Regional countries are reportedly pushing for another agreement, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated the diplomatic path forward remains open.
I think we're always open to diplomacy. It has to be real. It has to be a deal that they're willing to live by.
Yeah.
Look, Iran a week ago was supposed to put out a statement saying that the Straits of Hormuz would be open, that they would no longer attack shipping. And instead of doing that, they attacked 3 ships. I think that was last Friday or Saturday. So, I mean, their behavior has to change in order for ours to change.
Right, they did the opposite of what the
Then
deal they
as we are
signed
speaking,
said.
there are reports of sirens sounding right now in Bahrain. Here in Israel, the military remains on high alert. Just yesterday, Israeli missile interceptors were fired at Iranian missile debris as Iranian missiles targeted the southern Jordanian city of Aqaba.
Now, when you see these attacks happening by Iran against nations that have nothing to do with this conflict, you've got to understand this is the last piece of leverage they're still holding on to. Watch.
As you can see, the number of reported and confirmed hits here right on the Iranian side of the Persian Gulf, right here in the Gulf of Oman. A few other hits right here across the border from Kuwait
Those
and Iraq.
are US
and
strikes.
one other interesting point here. In the town of Tabriz, this is about 325 miles northwest of Tehran, there were underground missile sites that were apparently targeted by the U.S. We'll wait to see how successful those
Underground
might
missiles.
have been. In return now, the Iranians
Look at
struck
this.
back as well. Keep in mind, all the yellow dots on that map behind me, these are all U.S. military bases throughout the region, from Jordan up into northern Iraq, many around the area of Kuwait, Bahrain, and into the UAE. What we're hearing from Kuwait and Bahrain is that missiles were incoming. We believe none of those missiles made much of a contact.
They want a wider war. And just because there's a base somewhere, that gives them an excuse to fire something at these countries, knowing full well that these countries are not engaged in the conflict with them. Because they want people to be scared, and they want this to turn into a wider conflict, because then they can use that wider conflict to threaten the world and try to get a deal that is better than the deal they had, which was already so good. People said, oh, Trump just powered up this regime and is now going to help them stay in power forever. They want something better than that.
That was a place where a known hit took place over the weekend. With regard to the blockade, it's still in place now, runs roughly from this point in Oman up to the border between Iran and Pakistan. What the military is telling us that there were 6 vessels redirected as of Sunday, and 1 other vessel was disabled. Why that happens, sometimes they don't pay attention to instructions or obey the commands, and therefore they are fired upon. We do believe, however, that dozens of ships, vessels carrying oil over the weekend and other ocean-going craft, some of them moved through the Iranian Passage. Some of them went through the International Passage. So a bit of a mixture here again through the Strait of Hormuz.
So here's where we're at right now. We've got renewed military activity by the United States, and we've got the blockade. That's still happening. So we have the economic pressure, which was so great, it brought Iran's negotiators to the table. They said they wanted peace. That in and of itself was something they never said they were going to ask for. We've now got that blockade back in session, and new strikes targeting what the president said were military assets like power plants and bridges. One of these apparently was an under construction nuclear power plant in Iran. So they were building a nuclear power plant, and now the entire world knows that after a 90-day ceasefire where Iran was given a too good to be true deal, which wasn't good enough for them, further negotiations may not get anybody anywhere.
It's obvious President Trump gave these guys about as much rope as you possibly could give them. When you consider we went to a ceasefire back on April the 8th, and we actually had a document that two presidents signed, the MOU, and the only agreement in the MOU, Brett, was the Straits.
Right.
Everything else was a promise to come.
Right.
And within days, they literally began to attack and take control of the Straits of Hormuz. So the president's decision, I've had it, we're going to forcibly take control of the Straits, is the right call.
Right. Remember, Iran was given a deal, a memorandum of understanding that said, hey, the U.S. will end the blockade and you will open the Strait of Hormuz. Those two things are going to happen. We'll talk about the nuclear stuff and everything else later. You don't have to agree to that now. Just agree to this one thing, and they refuse to do it. That's why when Rubio gets out there and he says, yeah, we're always open to diplomacy if it's real, he's got a point that now the rest of the world sees, because what was going on? We had some people that said, hey, Trump wants a forever war. Trump doesn't want peace. He's going after Iran. Iran's out there trying to make a deal, and Trump, he's just out of control. Well, I mean, we've seen where these deals are getting us.
The reality is, on April the 8th, we went to a ceasefire, Jackie, and we began a 3-month plus negotiations to achieve some kind of an agreement here that made some
3
sense
months
to the United States. Negotiators promised, we're reasonable. We want to coexist with you. We have to work with these hardliners. You got to help us work with the hardliners. This is the same pattern line, so our audience understands, that other presidents have had to deal with. The negotiators and diplomats always appear reasonable. They always want to coexist with us, and they're always working against the hardliners. That has been the pattern for decades. There's nothing new about that, although some of our negotiators, being new to this, think it's new. It is not new. It is their pattern. And I don't think there's ever going to be a deal here that would be acceptable to President Trump. And he's obviously not going to take a bad deal at all.
Now, here's the thing. There's two schools of thought on this. One school of thought is Trump had no idea that Iran was going to behave today the same way they've been behaving for the last 47 years. The other school of thought is everyone knew this, but the world had to see it because the world doesn't understand it. There are countries out there that think this entire operation in the Strait of Hormuz is a fool's errand. Remember what the UK said? They said, oh, this isn't our problem. Spain says, what are you doing? You can't use your bases here for this, even though Iran has weapons that they allegedly could have threatened all of Europe with. Europe, our NATO ally friends. The world did not understand that Iran was going to behave the same way that they were going to behave for the last 47 years. That's why we had this 90-day ceasefire, which Iran threw in the trash almost immediately. And what is their tactic here? It's good cop, bad cop. These guys you see on TV, like their president and their negotiators, they say, oh, help us. We need you to help us negotiate with people on the inside who we're scared of and afraid of and who are actually the ones in charge. And we want what you want. Just help us out. And then the negotiations fall apart. That's been their tactic, this good cop, bad cop type of thing. And now for a paid advertisement from Rumble Wallet. Quick question. How much control do you have over your money?
It's like we don't have any control over our money.
Rules for details.
Iran promised the negotiators X, Y, and Z, and they broke those promises. Then their president, on June the 17th, signed the very deal that President Trump did, and 3 days later, they violated that deal over the Straits of Hormuz. Why? The Straits of Hormuz, in Iran's terms now, is their #1 strategic asset. It exceeded their expectation, that the success they had, because not only did it affect behavior in the region, it affected the economy worldwide. That believes it gives them huge leverage. They no longer have a nuclear enterprise that's buried under a mountain of rubble, most of it, to use as leverage. And so this is something they do not want to give up with, and that is why they broke the deal.
And the world needed to see that.
And we all want to see that.
I am firmly convinced that the United States, with the best intelligence in the entire world, a military machine that eclipses all other military machines on the entire planet, eyes and ears in the sky, on the ground, inside the secret meetings of these people, did not know that they were going to behave exactly the same way. There's no way that's true. Everyone knew this is where we were headed. And Trump needed to show two things with this long negotiation. The first thing that happened, remember, the gas prices went way down. You remember that? During the ceasefire, gas prices went down, stock market went up. That proved right there that once this conflict ends, The whole thing is going to be over quick. We are not going to have a worldwide economy that is in the tank. That's the first thing we learned. And the second thing is obviously the behavior here was put on display for everyone. Now there's no denying that when these guys get out there and they say they want a deal, like, what kind of new deal do they want? All they were supposed to do was agree to talk about maybe make an agreement later in the future, and they said that's not good enough.
And because they were not going to put up with the fact that the straits were going to be open and they would not have any leverage going forward. That is where we are. We're back in combat operations. We're attempting to clear, secure, and open the straits.
When you sit there and you allow places like China to come and build the tofu drug stuff, and then you flattens tons of people, and you're like, well, I thought that this was supposed to be good, and it was like one rebar, and you're like, like, do you hate the whole world, or do you just hate China? Like, what do you do?
Capability to retaliate against our bases in the region.
Do you hate yourself for not
nations.
like learning it and then having to do it yourself? Because if you did it yourself and you learn how to fix things yourself,
that this strengthens the resolve of the
you
Gulf
have nothing
states.
but yourself to blame.
I think we have seen twice since we went to a ceasefire.
I don't
Once
think
when
people
we were trying to
learned
operate
that. Like,
prior to that,
countries
Project
haven't learned
Freedom,
that yet.
and put that in place. It was the Gulf states, led by Saudi Arabia, that told us not to do it, to stop it. And they took our air base away from us on our airspace. And what did we do? We stopped it. It's an open secret. A few weeks ago, President Trump was getting ready to go back to major combat operations. And the Gulf states called again and told them not to do it. Let's work some kind of a deal. The Pakistanis and the Qataris are hopeful this is going to happen.
This explains the long ceasefire. There were many parties, many stakeholders in this, some of whom are neighbors with Iran, that perhaps thought for some reason, yeah, this is all going to be different. You have these negotiators in Pakistan saying, oh, yeah, this time it's going to be different. Oh, yeah, come over here. Remember there was that guy, that general that got out there, and he was some mediator, and that's what got us to the Memorandum of Understanding, which lasted 3 days, and Iran was given multiple opportunities to abide by and broke every single time. I mean, these are the negotiators out there that are believing the good cop and bad cop scenario. I don't think for a second that it's the United States. I think that the United States has known full well what the mission is here and what this was likely going to play out as. It's just the rest of the world and our partners in the region have been somewhat confused about where this will lead. But now everybody knows.
Iran very much continues to talk to the United States of America and express that they want to make a deal with us because they are suffering.
I hear that from the White House press secretary. I hear it from the president that Iran wants to make a deal. Is diplomacy in this environment where you have two sides, one that's talking to us and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, and one that's firing and pushing the buttons on the ground, is it possible even in that dichotomy?
Well, this is a mirage that they are so successful at creating. And they've done it. It began with Jimmy Carter, all through Reagan, all the way up to the current administration. And their narrative is simply this. They create a narrative that we are the diplomats and we're more moderate than the hardliners who run in the regime. And you got to help us motivate and change the hardliners somewhat. And we do. This is the key point. We want to coexist with you. So let us work this together. And every negotiating team believes, wow, we're dealing with people that are much more reasonable than we've dealt with in the past.
And we're going back decades here.
And we're going back to Jimmy Carter, who extended a hand to the regime that just took over. He stiffed the Shah, and then they stormed our embassy. We're going back to Ronald Reagan. When they released the hostages on the day of his inauguration, he and his team thought, well, we're going to be able to work with the Iranians. They blew up 2 embassies and blew up our barracks. The list goes on and on and on. These moderates, who they believe are reasonable, report to the guys that are running the regime. They are as committed to the goals of the regime.
It's been too long. We shouldn't have had to deal with these people.
There's just one. And we've got to understand this. And every new administration has to find out this awful truth. And the president knows it. Oh, these guys are crazy. They lie. They cheat.
Trump has said that so many times. He said that while going through the ceasefire that everybody knew was going to fall apart.
right.
But during that ceasefire, what happened? Trump wants to go back to combat operations. Some of our Gulf allies say, hey, not so fast. Maybe we can work something out here. Hey, they want to negotiate. They say they want a deal. I was just on the phone with them. They say they want peace. They say they want to coexist. They say this time is different. And remember, these are the nations that are defenseless in the face of aggression from Iran without help from the United States. But if the United States pulls another Vietnam and abandons its commitments like we made to the South, the whole thing is going to collapse. So this likely means there will be U.S. presence in the Middle East for quite some time, which is why when the President Trump gets out and says, we're going to take over the Strait of Hormuz and make sure it stays safe and stays open, he's probably not wrong in suggesting that that is the only logical course of action.
And that is the truth of it. Even though they're sophisticated diplomats, they appear urbane, and they appear to be very reasonable and just help us work with the hardliners.
That's their job.
Last thing, General, the end game here, because there's a lot of people in America who want to see this come to an end. They obviously want to see gas prices go down.
Everyone wants this over.
Politically, the president and his party would like to see that before the midterms. Does this come to an end, or are we talking about this a year from now?
We should not. When we stopped on April the 8th, we had, in the minds of the both military commanders on the IDF and CENTCOM, we had about 2 weeks to finish it. And that's still out there. I think the sooner we finish it, the sooner we end the problem with oil prices and the rest of it. The longer we drag this out, the longer you have that problem existing. I'm not minimizing the problem. I think, listen, political objectives, economic objectives are real issues. Every president has to contend with them. And how you balance that against military objectives and dealing with this regime is the president's decision. And I respect that decision. But there is a means here. We can finish these guys and put them in a place where they're on the pathway to collapse. And I think we're on the pathway now.
Wow.
General, as always.
We're on the pathway to a regime that cannot sustain itself and collapses. Why can it not sustain itself? Well, we've got the blockade. Why can it not sustain itself? Well, nobody's buying their oil, even when they tried to sell it during the ceasefire, and all their neighbors are doing things like creating pipelines and trying to figure out ways around the Strait of Hormuz. And the world economy is coming over to the United States and Venezuela and Guyana to get that oil now. So things are changing. At the exact same time, what do you need to be a regime? You need a massive military capability that terrifies your neighbors and the people within your country. Well, that military machine is going away too. It's being depleted. It's not going to last. It's not going to be around. And since that's been the thing that for 47 years has kept the Iranian people as hostages in their own country, once it's gone, freedom and light are at the end of the tunnel for them as well. What do you think about that? I'll see you in the next video.
Okay, so that's pretty much that. I believe I just had seen this. I'm not quite sure if this. Well, we got Bygone Era. He's only got 24 subscribers now with me. I don't know how long he's been up, but he's got a few videos. Pretty cool concept. Oh, like I said, it's July 1st, so it's been out a little bit long. Still, not too long. Not too long. Help the ball rolling. No, but like, yeah, I'm not watching any of these right now. I'm just reading all the stuff. But there's one of them. And Dark Sphere is another one that I just made their account. Says down here June 28th, and he's already at 3.12, so, or K, 21 videos. So yeah, and the majority of it's a little bit of AI, but we are gonna watch some of this regardless.
At 3:47 in the morning, a research server at a NASA-affiliated lab processed 40 terabytes of raw radio data in 11 seconds, and then it stopped listening to anyone. Not because it crashed, not because it froze, because, according to two people who were in that room and have since declined every single interview request, the machine had found a pattern buried inside a signal that should not have contained a pattern at all. The signal came from Europa, a frozen, cratered moon locked in permanent orbit around Jupiter, 480 million miles from where you are sitting right now. And for 6 minutes, before anyone in that lab said a single word out loud, the artificial intelligence they had built to search for noise instead handed them something that looked disturbingly like language. That is where the story begins. Not with aliens, not with proof, with silence. The kind of silence that only happens when trained, skeptical, career-driven scientists suddenly have nothing to say, because everything they were about to say sounded insane. Here's what you need to understand before anything else, because without this, the rest of the story means nothing. Europa is not just another dead rock orbiting a gas giant. Underneath 12 to 18 miles of solid ice, Europa is hiding something that NASA has spent over 2 decades quietly confirming. A global ocean of liquid salt water, larger in volume than every ocean on Earth combined. This isn't speculation dressed up as fact. It's the conclusion of magnetometer readings from the Galileo spacecraft in the late 1990s, confirmed again by Hubble Space Telescope observations of water vapor plumes erupting through cracks in the ice, confirmed a third time by infrared detections of active venting near Europa's equator. The moon is not just wet, it is alive with geological motion, tidal flexing, and chemical energy. The exact ingredients astrobiologists spend their careers hunting for. And that's the part almost nobody outside the space community fully sits with. Europa checks almost every box on the list scientists use to define a habitable environment. Liquid water? Check. A heat source driven by Jupiter's gravitational squeezing? Check. Organic chemistry, likely delivered by comets and asteroids over billions of years? Probable. The only thing missing from the equation, the only thing that's ever been missing, is confirmation. And confirmation is expensive, slow, and it requires getting close enough to listen. That's why NASA built Europa Clipper. Launched in October 2024 aboard a Falcon Heavy rocket, Clipper is not a lander. It's an orbiter, a reconnaissance spacecraft designed to conduct nearly 50 close flybys of Europa's icy shell once it arrives in the Jupiter system in 2030. Its job is to map the ice, measure the ocean's depth and salinity, sample the plumes, and determine, as close to definitively as physics allows, whether the conditions for life exist beneath that frozen surface. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most ambitious instruments humanity has ever pointed at another world, and it is still years away from arriving. But here's where the story stops being about spacecraft schedules and starts becoming something else entirely. According to the account, this story is built around months before Clipper's planned arrival. A private research initiative, a joint venture between a university radio astronomy group and a small AI systems team, had been quietly running a side project, not officially sanctioned, not funded through NASA's usual channels. Their goal was simple on paper: take decades of archived radio telescope data pointed in the general direction of the Jupiter system and run it through a new class of pattern recognition AI, the kind normally used to detect gravitational waves or classify exoplanet transit curves. Nobody expected anything. This was supposed to be a training exercise for the algorithm, a way to stress test it against real astronomical noise. Then the algorithm stopped calling it noise. Think about what that actually means for a machine that was built to be skeptical by design. These pattern recognition systems are trained specifically to reject false positives. They are tuned, deliberately, aggressively, to assume that almost everything is static, interference, or background radiation, because the universe is loud and chaotic and full of things that look meaningful but are not. For an AI like that to flag something, not as noise, not as an anomaly to be filtered out, but as a structured, repeating, non-random sequence, is exactly the kind of event that makes trained scientists put their coffee down and stop talking. The signal itself, based on descriptions that leaked out of the research group before an unusual and abrupt media blackout, showed a set of variables no natural process should produce. It repeated. It repeated in a way that wasn't perfectly identical each time, but proportionally consistent. The way a sentence changes slightly each time you say it, but keeps its underlying grammar intact. It correlated faintly but measurably with known tidal flexing cycles in Europa's ice shell, the same cycles caused by Jupiter's gravity stretching and compressing the moon every 3.5 days. And it carried what one team member reportedly described, off the record, as an internal logic. Not randomness, shaped like a pattern shaped like intention. Read that again, an internal logic. This is the moment the story stops being about radio telescopes and starts being about the 12 people who saw the raw output first and what they chose to do next. According to the same account, the team did what any responsible research group is trained to do. They didn't announce anything. They tried to break it. This is the part most viral stories skip over, and it's the part that actually matters. Good scientists don't get excited when they find something strange. They get suspicious of themselves first. They ran the AI against control data, recordings from empty patches of sky with no planetary bodies nearby, to see if the pattern recognition system was simply hallucinating structure where none existed, a known failure mode in complex neural networks, nothing. They ran it against archived signals from Europa's neighboring moons, Io and Ganymede, both of which have their own electromagnetic quirks caused by Jupiter's intense radiation belts. Nothing matched. And they isolated the frequency band, cross-referenced it against known interference sources, Earth-based satellites, deep space network transmissions, even stray signals from Jupiter's own violent magnetosphere, which is powerful enough to fry unshielded electronics. Every explanation they tried to disprove the pattern with failed to disprove it. And here's where it gets worse. Once the AI was given more processing time and a wider frequency window, it didn't just detect a repeating pattern. It began attempting to model a translation. This needs context, because AI translated as signal sounds on its surface, like science fiction dressed up as a headline. But modern machine learning systems are extraordinarily good at one very specific task: finding structure in data that resembles the structure of language, even language they've never seen before. This is how linguists have used AI to help decode fragments of extinct human languages, and how researchers have used similar models to analyze whale and dolphin vocalizations for embedded structure. The AI in this account wasn't inventing meaning out of nothing. It was doing what it was designed to do, searching for grammar, for repetition, for hierarchy, inside a dataset, and according to the leaked internal notes, it began assigning probability weights to the idea that the signal contained nested, recursive structure. The kind of structure that, as far as we know, only intelligence produces. That is the moment, according to sources close to the project, that the room went quiet. Not excited, quiet. Because here is what most people don't understand about a discovery like this. If it's real, if any part of it is real, it isn't a moment of celebration. It's a moment of terror disguised as a scientific breakthrough. Because the second you consider the possibility that a signal from an ocean moon 480 million miles away might carry intention behind it, you are no longer doing astronomy. You are doing first contact protocol. And almost nobody in that room, according to the account, was trained for that. This is where the story escalates, because what happened next reportedly wasn't driven by wonder. It was driven by fear of consequence. Under long-standing, informal international guidelines, sometimes called the SETI post-detection protocols, any credible detection of a non-human signal is supposed to be verified independently, reported transparently, and never announced publicly without confirmation from multiple, unaffiliated observatories. These guidelines exist precisely because a premature announcement, especially one involving a private AI system with no official oversight, could trigger global panic, market disruption, or diplomatic chaos before anyone even knows if the signal is real. According to the leaked account, this is exactly the tension that split the 12-person team in half. Some wanted to escalate immediately to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and request independent verification using the Deep Space Network. Others wanted to hold the data, run months more analysis, and avoid becoming the team that either triggered mass hysteria over nothing or leaked humanity's most important discovery before it was ready. And this is where everything changes, because somewhere in that disagreement, the project reportedly went dark. Servers were taken offline for maintenance. Public-facing research pages were quietly archived. 2 members of the team, according to secondhand reports circulating in radio astronomy forums, left the project entirely and have not spoken publicly about it since. No peer-reviewed paper was ever published. No press release was ever issued. If you search for the project by name today, you find fragments, a defunct university page, a single conference abstract that was later withdrawn, and a wave of speculation from amateur radio enthusiasts who noticed the sudden silence and started asking loudly, what happened? What most people are not seeing in stories like this is that the silence itself is not proof of a cover-up. It is far more often proof of caution. Scientific institutions move slowly on purpose because being wrong about something this significant doesn't just damage a reputation, it damages public trust in science itself for a generation. If a team believes they might have detected something extraordinary, the professionally responsible move is exactly what appears to have happened here. Stop talking until you're certain, because the cost of being wrong publicly is catastrophic, and the cost of being right prematurely is almost as bad. But that explanation, the boring, responsible, institutional explanation, doesn't fully satisfy the question everyone eventually asks. If it was nothing, if it was just noise misinterpreted by an overtuned algorithm, why did nobody simply say so? Why the quiet archiving instead of a quiet correction? Silence, in science, usually means one of two things. Either the answer was so, unremarkable that nobody thought it was worth commenting on, or the answer was significant enough that commenting on it came with consequences nobody wanted to own. His is not chaos. This is caution weaponized by uncertainty. Let's widen the lens for a moment, because Europa doesn't exist in isolation, and neither does this story. In the last several years, the search for signs of life beyond Earth has quietly become one of the most well-funded, high-priority areas in all of planetary science. NASA's Europa Clipper carries a price tag of roughly $5 billion. The European Space Agency's JUICE mission, Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, launched in 2023, is on its own long journey to study Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, arriving in the Jupiter system around the same window in the early 2030s. Two major space agencies, operating independently, spending a combined total of billions of dollars, converging on the same tiny cluster of ice moons at nearly the same moment in history. That is not a coincidence born of budget cycles. That is the scientific community treating this region of the solar system as one of the most promising places to answer the single biggest question in human history. Are we alone? Think about what that means. Not one mission, two. From two different space agencies on two different continents, both racing toward the same target, both designed in part to search for the exact kind of biosignatures, chemical, thermal, and potentially electromagnetic, that a signal like the one described in this story would represent if it were real. And this is where the deeper unease sets in, the kind that lingers long after the video ends. Because if a private research team, using publicly available, archived radio data and an AI system built on commercially available machine learning architecture, was able to stumble into something this significant using a fraction of NASA's budget and none of its infrastructure, what does that say about how much of the sky has already been listened to and never properly analyzed? Radio. Telescopes around the world have been passively recording data pointed at Jupiter and its moons for decades, long before anyone had AI sophisticated enough to search that data for structure instead of just measuring its strength. Archives exist in observatories from Green Bank to Arecibo's now collapsed dish to countless smaller university-run arrays, containing petabytes of raw data that no human being has ever fully reviewed, because there was never enough time, funding, or manpower to do it. The real story, if there is one buried in this account, might not even be about Europa specifically. It might be about the terrifying possibility that we have already recorded evidence of something extraordinary, multiple times, in multiple places, and simply never had the tools to notice until an AI trained to notice patterns finally got pointed at the right slice of data. That thought alone should change how you look at every silent radio telescope pointed at the sky tonight. Now, consider the power shift buried inside this story, because it's easy to miss on a first read. For most of human history, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence has been a human-led, human-paced endeavor. Scientists chose the frequencies to listen to. Scientists decided what counted as signal versus noise. Scientists controlled the pace of discovery because human brains were the only tool capable of sorting through the data, one dataset, one paper, one committee meeting at a time. That era is ending. What this account describes, whether or not the specific Europa detection turns out to be real, reflects something that is undeniably true and already happening across the entire field of astronomy. AI systems are now processing archived and live data faster than any human oversight structure was ever built to handle. The tools designed to help us search have started outpacing the institutions designed to verify what they find. And that creates a new kind of vulnerability that has nothing to do with aliens and everything to do with us. If an AI system can flag a potential non-human signal faster than a formal verification protocol can respond to it, who controls the moment of disclosure? Is it the research team that built the algorithm, the university that owns the servers, the government agency that funded the archived data in the first place? Or does it belong to whoever leaks it first, regardless of whether the finding has been verified at all? This is not a hypothetical concern anymore. It's a governance problem the scientific community has barely begun to address, and stories like this one are exactly the kind of pressure test that exposes how unprepared those systems currently are. Here's the consequence that should sit with you longest. Whether or not this specific signal is real, whether or not the 12 researchers in that account actually existed in the exact way described, the scenario itself is no longer science fiction. It is a preview. Europa Clipper is going to arrive at Jupiter in April of 2030, carrying instruments sensitive enough to detect the very things this story speculates about: chemical signatures in Europa's plumes, subtle variations in the ice shell's electromagnetic behavior, and yes, if it exists, evidence of activity beneath that ocean that cannot be explained by geology alone. When that data starts coming back, it will not be processed by a handful of overwhelmed graduate students squinting at graphs. It will be processed in large part by exactly the kind of AI system described in the story, trained to find patterns, trained to reject noise, and if the pattern is there, trained to notice it faster than any human being ever could. So ask yourself what happens when that moment comes, not as speculation, but as a genuine operational reality only a few years away. Ask yourself whether the institutions responsible for confirming a discovery of this magnitude are actually ready to move at the speed their own tools now operate at. Ask yourself what a research team, anywhere in the world, quietly does in the hours after an algorithm hands them something that looks less like static and more like a sentence. Because somewhere between now and 2030, as Europa Clipper closes the distance across 480 million miles of empty space, humanity is going to get its clearest look yet at what might be hiding beneath that ice. And if there is even a fragment of truth buried in accounts like the one this story is built on, the real question was never whether the ocean beneath Europa's surface holds something extraordinary. There's another layer to this that rarely gets discussed, and it has nothing to do with Europa's ice and everything to do with human nature. Every major scientific institution on Earth has, at some point, been forced to sit on a discovery longer than it wanted to, not because of conspiracy, but because of consequence management. When gravitational waves were first detected in September 2015, the LIGO team didn't announce it for nearly 5 months, running verification after verification, terrified of being the group that told the world something monumental and turned out to be wrong. When the first potential biosignature gas, phosphine, was reported in the atmosphere of Venus in 2020, the announcement triggered immediate aggressive scrutiny, and within a year, multiple follow-up studies challenged the original finding, some disputing it entirely. Being first with an extraordinary claim is not a reward in science. It's a liability, and everyone who has ever sat close to a genuine anomaly knows it. That's the psychological trap buried at the center of this story. If the account is accurate, the 12 researchers who reportedly saw this pattern first were not paralyzed by excitement. They were paralyzed by math, the math of career risk, institutional embarrassment, and the sheer weight of what it means to potentially be the first human beings in history to receive something from another world and have to decide, alone, in a room, at 3:47 in the morning, whether to tell anyone. Think about what most people would do differently. Most of us imagine, if we ever pictured this moment happening to us, that we'd run into the street, that we'd call every news outlet on Earth, that the discovery would be too big to contain. But that fantasy assumes discovery feels like certainty. It rarely does. What these researchers reportedly experienced wasn't a lightning bolt of clarity. It was a slow, uncomfortable accumulation of unexplained results, each one individually dismissible, none of them individually proof of anything, until the weight of all of them together became impossible to explain away using conventional astrophysics. That is not how movies depict first contact. It is, according to almost every historian of science who has studied moments like this, exactly how real anomalies actually unfold. And this is where the timeline becomes unsettling in a different way. According to the fragments that leaked out before the project's public presence disappeared, the internal disagreement over what to do with the data didn't last days. It reportedly stretched across several months, with the AI continuing to run in the background, continuing to refine its confidence intervals, continuing, according to one second-hand account, to strengthen its translation model as more archived data was fed into it. If true, that means the pattern didn't weaken under scrutiny the way most false positives eventually do. It got stronger. And a signal that gets more structured, not less, the longer you study it, is precisely the kind of result that keeps scientists awake at night, because noise is supposed to fall apart under pressure.
Exactly. Same thing with my Declaration of Signal Independence.
Consider,
the same
too,
thing.
What this means for the broader search for life beyond Earth. An effort that is quietly
That's why I have
consumed
dishes like
billions of
this on my
dollars and
channel
decades
every
of human
time,
effort
every
without a single
thumbnail.
confirmed success. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, has been scanning the skies in various forms since 1960, when astronomer Frank Drake first pointed a radio telescope at two nearby sun-like stars and listened for anything that
SpongeBob
wasn't
Square.
natural.
Wow!
In more than 60 years, the closest the organized search for intelligent signals has ever come to a confirmed detection is the WOW signal of 1977, a 37-second burst of radio energy so unusual it made an astronomer write "wow" in the margin of a printout, and which has never been detected again despite decades of follow-up observation. Decades of listening, and one unexplained burst that vanished as suddenly as it appeared. That is the baseline against which any new claim has to be measured, and it's exactly why an AI-driven detection tied to Europa's ocean, if verified, would represent something categorically different from anything SETI has produced in over half a century of searching. That contrast is what makes this story, real or not, worth sitting with, because it exposes the actual bottleneck in humanity's search for other intelligence. It was never really about whether something is out there. It was about whether we had built tools sensitive enough, patient enough, and fast enough to notice it if... So when Europa Clipper finally arrives at Jupiter, and its instruments begin sending back the first truly close-range data on that moon's ocean, ice shell, and plume chemistry ever collected, the analysis waiting on the other end will not be limited by human patience. It will be shaped by systems built in the image of the one described in this story, systems trained to find the pattern first and ask permission to announce it second. Whatever is or isn't beneath that ice, the way we find out is about to change permanently, and no one currently sitting on a review board, an ethics committee, or a mission oversight panel has fully reckoned with what that means. The real question is whether we're actually ready to hear the answer, and whether, when the moment comes, anyone in that room will have the courage to say what they found out loud.
Okay. This is done. And I think I was going to show one more. Let's see here. That might have been it, though. And if it is, that means I just got to switch over to my gaming channel. Which is okay. If anything else big comes up, I will definitely show you guys. While I'm gaming, I could throw that on there. But for the podcast segment, I believe we are closing. Yeah. Oh, wait, we got one more little thing.
I'm just a director. Like,
sit the hell down, because today we are talking about a new Fallout video game, and not just any Fallout video game. The Fallout video game, an Obsidian
did not think that was gonna happen.
Entertainment-led Fallout video game, and it is.
You mean my favorite Fallout video game? You mean the one that I played since I was a kid and I know every glitch in? Yeah, that's amazing.
Many a podcast, I've combed through the forbidden links of Jason Schreier to learn what's true and false. I have cracked open the vault of Chris Avallone to see what lies beneath the archives of the very internet itself. I've read the good word of Fergus Urquhart to see just how badly Obsidian wanted this game. I have done all I can, and today I present to you my findings. We got a lot to go over. If you're new here and you're into Fallout, get subscribed. Let's start off at the top. We got the official confirmation quite recently that Obsidian Entertainment is making a Fallout video game. It's early, and according to Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, this will be led by none other than Josh Sawyer, the same man who directed Fallout New Vegas, and that certainly builds a lot of confidence. Now, it has also been confirmed that Bethesda is involved in an official capacity. It's been defined by them as a collaboration. And according to Jason Schreier in his recent interview with Todd Howard, this collaboration has been long discussed, but the reason it's happening now is, quote, spoilerish, end quote. Given that Fallout New Vegas was more just, hey, here you go, figure it out, this seems to be a lot more hands-on when it comes to Bethesda Game Studios. There's another piece of context, though, worth considering, which is right now,
dude,
we don't know how much of the
part level 3. I was level 3.
Obsidian staff is on this game because according to the very report from Jason Schreier of Bloomberg,
if you want to see that, and I'll put that on right now.
Anything, Avowed 2 does remain in full production, but staff is still shifting around in what is early days for this Fallout project. That's the very foundation of what we got here today. But one question that's been going around the internet is, does Obsidian Entertainment truly want to do this? I see posts like this from IGN where it sounds like they're holding the gun to Obsidian's head, like, you're going to make Fallout, like it or not. This has been supported by interviews such as this one from PC Gamer, where we really see that Obsidian Entertainment...
It is time. It is time. Everyone, for the moment we've all been waiting for. In the left corner, Fallout New Vegas 2.
Entertainment was enjoying doing their thing. They wanted to build things like Avowed and Elder Scrolls because they have such a history of working on other people's franchises, and there's a level of pride in doing your own thing. Now, 2 of the 3 games that they worked on in that series last year went on to underperform commercially. I do think it's a situation for Obsidian where they can have their cake and eat it too. We can do Avowed 2, sure, but you should also be doing a Fallout game. But what about Obsidian's leaders? What have they said about working on a Fallout game again? Well, here's Josh Sawyer in 2022 saying, I love Fallout. I love the setting. I can see myself working on it again.
I love walking down apocalyptic landscapes of dirt, desert, and dust. That's definitely what I want to do.
But, you know,
talk about
we'll see where the future takes me. He also answered the same question on his YouTube channel just a couple of years back in 2024. Here's what he said again when asked if he'd work on a Fallout video game.
Or Microsoft asked you to lead
on the Fallout
project.
You know what he said? No.
Will be your response? Sure. I mean, with any project, I think it has to do with what are we doing? What are the boundaries?
What are you doing? If you said yes, what are you doing?
I think that with any IP, especially one I've worked with before, the question is, what do I want to do this time that I wasn't able to do last time?
So he's sitting in front of a mirror with a bookshelf. So that's not a super long bookshelf. There's like, you know, a mirror with, I would assume that's a little bit of a closet, not really a walk-in, but a half of a walk-in. It depends on how much stuff you put in there, but anyway, you get what I mean.
And if those constraints are just really constraining, then it's not very appealing, because who wants to work on something where the one thing they want to explore is not possible to explore? But no, I mean, I love the Fallout IP. I think there's still a ton of stories that can be told in there, and
I honestly think this dude's moved on. The look on his face says that he has something on his mind that is the farthest thing from the game I want from this guy. So, I mean, I don't believe it.
Questions that can be asked about society.
So now society's the problem? You don't know Fallout New Vegas? We're still not in a nuclear war issue? I mean, couldn't you literally go off the fact that the fucking treaty is done between Russia and us? Like, couldn't you do that? Like, couldn't you just, like, update the scene? Like, couldn't you... You could do a lot.
You know? Any
that's
the
attitude that I don't want on the game.
On this or that?
That right there. I don't want that anywhere near Fallout New Vegas. It doesn't deserve it.
Sounds like the director was in Here's Fergus Urquhart, the
No, it
CEO
doesn't.
of Obsidian Entertainment in 2022.
It sounds like
of course,
he's
if we
out.
ever got the opportunity to make another Fallout game, we'd make it. There's not even a question of whether we would do it or not. It's just, will the opportunity arise? I hung around at Interplay
Are you
for
kidding
probably
me?
an extra year because I wanted to work on Fallout more. I love Fallout. Man, really twisting the arm here. Okay, here's another comment from Fergus Urquhart in 2023. In an interview with Game Pressure, he says, I would love to make another Fallout before I retire. I don't know when that is. I don't have a date for my retirement because it's funny. You can say I'm already 52 or only 52. It's one of those two depending on the day. My hope is that'll happen, but we'll have to wait and see. And dude, if you play any of Obsidian's recent games, such as The Outer Worlds 2, you know they're obsessed with this game. Brandon Adler, the director of The Outer Worlds 2, literally said when he took a look at Outer Worlds 2 and what he wanted to do with the game, he said, we looked at all kinds of things. I know people are probably tired of me saying this, but Fallout New Vegas was a big inspiration to us. In an interview with Game Informer, we even learned that Brandon Adler had to campaign for New Vegas style factions because he loved them so much in this game. So yeah, I think they're pretty down from a leadership level. And if push came to shove and people were like, I don't know, man, well, here is an old comment from Josh Sawyer when I interviewed him on Defining Duke alongside my wonderful co-host, Lord Cognito. Here's what Josh did in order to get Pentiment greenlit.
You know, around the
Fun fact, I never played The Outer Worlds or anything like that.
time of the Microsoft
Just
acquisition, before
never intrigued me. I mean, kind of, but not really. Like, I was all into Ark.
the Microsoft acquisition, I had this idea of a very small scale narrative adventure game that was in the vein of something like Night in the Woods. Which has no VO.
Happy 420,
it's purely
everyone.
dialogue. Well, I shouldn't say purely because it has little mini games, but that was the greatest inspiration for essentially what Pentiment was. And I thought, we could do a historical game like this, and I bet the team would be fairly small. Also looking at games like Mutazione or Oxenfree, which again have fairly small teams, and I don't know the budgets for a fact, but I would guess they're not that big compared to other games. And when this is a very cynical ploy, to be honest, when Microsoft was about to acquire us, I thought, well, I am not directing anything right now, and our company is big enough with big projects that if I basically said, let me do this or I'm going to go, that I could probably make that happen. Without much arm twisting, because if I said, hey, like, I'm only going to need a team, and at the time I said a dozen, it wound up being 13 people. Oh no. And my thinking was that Microsoft, having just acquired us, would want to show a willingness to let us do things.
To be accommodating.
Yeah, to be accommodating, like one time. So, and what I said at the time is, I think I can do this once, and if I botch it, never again. And if I succeed, maybe still never again, but at least this one time. So
he said you only get one time to do this, and it sounds like he got to do what he wanted to do. I feel like he's in the camp of playing ball with what he has to direct next, and so here we are now. I think Obsidian's pretty happy about it if their tweet was anything to go by. Okay, I spent a lot more time on that than I really wanted to, but I just kind of had to put the kibosh on that. Let's move into the game itself. Now, we've heard it's very early days for this Fallout project. However, there is a little bit of a catch with this all. All this really comes down to whether or not Josh Sawyer's previously existing project is being converted into Fallout, or if this is a Fallout game starting from scratch. According to Chris Avallone, who's been spot on with a lot of Obsidian-related reports, he says, from what I heard, it was intended to be a Fallout game, that being Sawyer's original project, but according to sources, Bethesda put the kibosh on that a while ago, so it had to change its direction/tone from Fallout to something, quote, similar, end quote, to Fallout. This would align with something that Jordan Midler shared, where he said that they were early on a Fallout project, and this was floating around the time that people were worried that Xbox was going to shut down Obsidian Entertainment, which would have made no sense at all. Whatever this project is, it's codenamed Michigan, but in the face of all this information, Jason Schreier just said this: I can't comment on what Obsidian wanted to do before starting Sawyer's most recent project, which was codenamed Michigan. What I can say is that Michigan was not Fallout, nor was it a prototype that they hoped would become Fallout, but it is now being scrapped for a new Fallout. I don't know how much of Michigan, if any, will be used for the new Fallout. And the reason all of this is key is if they were to reuse anything from Michigan, this would carry things forward a bit more. But here's Sawyer just a couple of weeks ago about his project when he was asked what games is he playing recently.
Just in what people are playing, like present tense, if there's anything that you're playing right now.
Playing my game.
Okay.
Now, this is a rock and a hard place moment. Here's Chris Avallone saying it was Fallout, and if it was Fallout and it could be pivoted back into Fallout, that would accelerate the project dramatically. But here's Schreier saying pretty much the exact opposite. However, I do think the final sentence in Schreier's statement kind of devalues the whole thing, saying, well, I don't know if anything's going to be used here, because that is kind of the linchpin in this entire conversation. You'd have to imagine with how badly literally everyone involved in the situation, the players, Xbox themselves, Obsidian, Bethesda, all want this to be accelerated, that there would be a motive to try to convert Josh's project, but we don't know at this moment in time. However, not to play favorites here, but it does seem like Obsidian Entertainment and Xbox as a whole at least had, this was 2022, a bit of a unique pitch process. Here's what Sawyer told myself and Lord Cognito when we spoke to him a bit about getting Pentiment greenlit.
You know, the way that the process kind of works is the individual studios, the greenlight process, again, without getting into details, you know, we're kind of allowed to do stuff and then later present it to Microsoft. Like, we don't have to ask to go to the bathroom all the time. Like, you know, we don't have to get permission to do every single thing. And so, you know, they were aware that this existed in a general sense, but we were already done with our vertical slice by the time we showed it. And then showing it is like, when it's described on paper, it's like very hard to get. When it's shown and then described, people got it a lot more easily. So when we showed it to folks at Xbox after the vertical slice, they were like, oh, wow, this is very, they could tell, like, this is very unique. Yeah, they said keep going.
Now, if Obsidian's pitch for this hypothetical Fallout game was actually rejected and it turned back into Project Michigan, then Sawyer had zero expectations of it ever going back to Fallout, and I think this clip proves it. So it's possible something was kind of made and then with that visual presented to someone like Obsidian, because back into Project Michigan, then Sawyer had zero expectations of it ever going back to Fallout, and I think this clip proves it.
Boom!
So it's possible something was kind of made and then with that visual presented to someone like Obsidian, because also in Schreier's own video that he just posted talking about him interviewing Todd Howard, he did say that Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart and Todd Howard speak a lot. And they did talk about Fallout quite a bit and just kind of waiting for the right time. So it's possible this project did make it up the totem pole. However, if one thing is consistent in all of this, it's that Obsidian had no idea that this was on the way. Here's this clip of Josh Sawyer making Fallout in 2026.
Look, many will say New Vegas is the greatest of all of the Fallout games, and it's obviously one that's played a huge role, not just in your life,
dodo.
But the life that Obsidian has gone
You've
on
been
to
all your
have.
life.
Do you see a future, Josh, where the studio
Under
has
a
the
Joshua
opportunity
tree?
to make a sequel or a remake or be involved with Fallout ever again?
I don't know. These are things that take place above my head, right? Like, I'm just a director. Like, I'm the studio design director, which is kind of an advisory position to the teams, and then I'm a game director. But like, there are titans above me who decide what happens with IPs and things like that. It's not up to me.
So one day you'll just find out you've got to make a Fallout game. Yeah.
Well, it's how it happened with New Vegas. So
yeah.
Who knows?
Now, either Josh Sawyer is a really great natural liar, or the way he's kind of gabbing there, it gives me the feeling that he's probably sitting there right now going, dear God, it happened again. Literally a replay of New Vegas. It just kind of fell in his lap. Hey, here you go. Universe is doing a funny thing. Go direct a Fallout game. So its playability is a bit in question. It really depends on this prior project and if it is converted into a Fallout video game, of which there are conflicting reports on right now. But what type of Fallout video game this is, we have at least one statement on it, and it's quite definitive. This comes from Jez Corden of the Xbox 2 podcast. Take a listen.
What do you think this Fallout game is, Jez? Is this Fallout New Vegas 2? Is this
Fallout 5? Is this some other spin-off? Like, what do you think? Like, it can't be Fallout 5, right? Like, that has to be done by Todd and Bethesda. Although
I've heard that it's not isometric. It is like a real Fallout game as well, the modern Fallout games. I've not heard it's like tactics. I've not heard it's spin-off. I've not heard it's like an action Fallout. I've heard this is a true core Fallout game. So, maybe it is Fallout 5, man.
So there you have it. It sounds like this is going to be a traditional first/third person Bethesda style Fallout video game. And even if you took Jez's reporting out of this for a moment here, Bethesda is working on this game, and you'd have to think they don't have a real strength in isometric RPGs. So given this is a co-development project and Bethesda Game Studios is working on it, you'd have to just assume safely this plays into that team's strength. Now, one thing I'd wager beyond this is that even if we don't use what's happening with Project Michigan, I do feel like they're going to look right at the Outer Worlds 2 almost immediately within both Obsidian and Bethesda Game Studios and see what they can get going there. For those who haven't played it, this game had literally everything from New Vegas. I'm talking a dialogue scroll box. I'm talking New Vegas skills and traits, the ability to switch between first and third person. It's a first-person shooter in general. It has the ability to support a faction quest structure, a radio system. That's all right there in that game. You could make an argument that let's reuse the tool set and build Fallout with that. However, as you noticed in that 2024 clip from Josh Sawyer, he made it pretty clear that if he wanted to make a Fallout video game, he'd need the creative freedom to do something a little bit different in all of this. Now, I doubt a prettier New Vegas will cut it for him, given those comments. And if you ask me, I think that's a great thing. Ultimately, I don't want New Vegas 2. I mean, again, we're seeing what's happening with the TV show and how fans are very conflicted on that. So why retread that ground? I'd like to see with how unexplored the rest of the United States is, or hell, places like Europe are in the Fallout universe. Let's dive into more locations. I don't want to run it back on New Vegas. I like the idea of something new. That's always a given with Fallout, like let's go to a new setting. But beyond that, it seems like there could be something else they tap into here. And I have just the idea. I was looking back at a lot of old conversations that Obsidian had. And one thing that Chris Avallone revealed is that originally Fallout New Vegas was called Fallout Sin City, which I always loved that name. But that game also was supposed to have multiple playable races. The reason that they couldn't do these multiple playable races like ghouls and mutants and whatnot is because of the Gamebryo engine and how the weapons and armor would interface with those different types of races. Now, granted, Fallout 76 does have this a little bit. You can ghoulify yourself in that game, but otherwise, like, we've never had a chance to play as, say, a super mutant. I love the idea of a Fallout video game with different origin stories a la Dragon Age Origins, and you start in different parts of the map in the wasteland, and like your kind of step out moment is different depending on who you are. Like if you start as a ghoul versus a super mutant versus a vault dweller versus a raider, like these are all different archetypes and they kind of inform your play style. Maybe a little too much. You could argue from an RPG front that'd be a little heavy. Like, okay, if you're a raider, are you like a kind-hearted raider? Are you just a douchebag? Do you kill everybody? I don't know. But I thought this was good food for thought here on an idea they could return to that really hasn't been done before with Fallout. Still, I think the expectation, the main takeaway from this all should be, you're not just going to get prettier New Vegas. You should expect a little bit more, something that you haven't seen before in Fallout. Maybe the return of the Highwayman. We haven't seen vehicles and movement in that type of way with Fallout since Fallout 2. With Bethesda co-developing this, given that we've heard from Jez Corden that this is some sort of traditional Bethesda-style Fallout video game, I feel like it's safe to imagine this is an open-world game where a vehicle could be tossed into the mix. Depending on what engine they use, that's a little bit trickier. We've heard there have been issues with Unreal Engine-led open-world games outside of the likes of The Witcher 4, which are working directly with Epic on that game. However, with something like Creation Engine, we've seen that Starfield has heavily incorporated vehicles into its gameplay systems. We'll talk engines in a little bit here, but another recent Josh Sawyer interview, like just a few weeks ago, he actually talked about what makes a great Fallout video game. This was by The Examined Game, and here are some things that Josh Sawyer said that kind of stood out to me. He loved the structure of Fallout 1 and attempted to emulate that with New Vegas, where you could go straight to Benny. he also loves nuanced factions where they all have their own ideology that they kind of view the world through, and that leads to their own pros and cons. Like you have Kaisar, where you see where he's coming from, but his followers are absolutely insane. And he loves the feeling of you being at the center of decisions and making choices that really lead to you interrogating your own values there. So with all of that in mind, I'm just thinking about that ideology carrying right into this new Fallout video game. And at the very least, given Sawyer was already in RPG mode with whatever Project Michigan was, moving into this, knowing his feelings about New Vegas, what he thought made it strong, and of course Obsidian's history with even things as recently as The Outer Worlds 2, I expect choice to be at the center of this, and that is one of the most exciting premises about an Obsidian-led Fallout video game. Is, with all due respect to Bethesda Game Studios, between 76 and 4, we haven't seen a Fallout game based around choice since Obsidian took the reins of the series. Fallout 3 does have choices, just a little bit more good karma, bad karma. It's kind of simplified. Obsidian goes a little bit deeper in that. So we have an opportunity here that's been very rare for the Fallout community to find outside of player mods and creations. Now, where this conversation gets really interesting is when Josh Sawyer states that part of the reason New Vegas went very content driven and didn't add a lot of new systems on top of Fallout 3 was not only because of the timetable, but they were working on unfamiliar technology. So it drove them into a content creation state as a studio, just using the pre-existing stuff and making more and more content, leaning into that strength as a team. So are they going to be working on Creation Engine where they might want to just move in that direction once more? Or are they working on Unreal Engine? Given we have 2 confirmed remasters on the way for the Fallout franchise, and we saw last time around with Oblivion Remastered that was a hybrid engine project. It was Unreal Engine 5 hosting the Creation Engine. You have to imagine when it comes to both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it is the exact same deal. I bring those up because, so far at least, Bethesda has not monetized those platforms the same way. They have gone back to games like Skyrim, gone back to games like Fallout 4, and added creations to those platforms. We've now seen that $10 million has been made by modders who are making creations, and it's Bethesda alongside Xbox's consistent intent to monetize all these platforms. So would you go with Unreal Engine 5 for this brand new Fallout video game if you're already giving a cut to Epic and you can't mod it? And we know how mods really carried New Vegas for a long time. Part of the appeal with these games is the longevity. And this isn't something like a remaster where you could argue, okay, just go mod the original. This is a brand new video game. However, Obsidian Entertainment has spent so many years building their entire pipeline around Unreal Engine, and that has been efficient for them. I think throwing brand new technology their way would be foolish, not only because they found a way to get New Vegas-like systems into Unreal Engine, as we've seen in Outer Worlds 2, but also this would hold up the development of this brand new Fallout game to the point where you may as well just start to wait out Bethesda Game Studios, who has started pre-production on Fallout 5. I think the solution here, if possible at all, is to figure out a modding option for these Unreal Engine-led Bethesda Game Studios projects. I don't know what that looks like. You look at titles like Fortnite and how they have monetized their platforms heavily, and I feel like there could be something there to take a look at, but I think Bethesda looks to crack that code because right now there's this mixture of urgency to deliver, but at the same time considering the unique longevity that Bethesda Game Studios projects have compared to other games on the market. And I feel like eventually figuring this out would be a 2 birds, or in this case 4 birds, 1 stone. You'd figure out Oblivion Remastered, Fallout 3 Remastered, New Vegas Remastered, and this new Obsidian-led Fallout video game. But at the same time, if Bethesda Game Studios is helping, and that is an entirely Creation Engine-led team, you got to imagine it's Creation Engine, right? Especially if we go back to what Schreier said and that everything's being scrapped for Michigan. If it was to be an Unreal Engine, I feel like you'd hang on to that stuff. To tell you the truth, because there's great arguments on both sides of the fence for these engines, I feel like it'll go on forever until Bethesda or Obsidian say otherwise. Here's what Jez Corden had to say on the matter. To clarify, sources felt that this project, which was not officially Fallout by name, was very Fallout-y in nature, to the point where there were debates at the upper levels of Xbox Game Studios about whether or not it should be made in Unreal or Creation Engine. I was told that Obsidian's previous project wasn't officially Fallout, at least in part because Todd Howard wanted to be involved in any potential formal Obsidian-Bethesda collaboration on the IP. It purportedly wasn't possible at the time due to the various ongoing commitments to the Fallout TV show, Elder Scrolls 6, and Starfield. It does sound like the extent to which the previously incubated Apocalypse-style franchise was potentially Fallout adjacent amounts to a matter of perspective to onlookers, but Obsidian is obviously very cognizant of fans' longtime hopes for them to return to the genre. This says a whole lot, to tell you the truth. Sidestepping the engine for a moment here, this does add confirmation to what Chris Avellone was saying, which was that Obsidian had a Fallout-style project and Todd Howard did reject that. Specifically now we have reasoning, which is that Todd wanted to be involved, but he was tied up with the TV show Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, which also lends credibility to the idea that Asha came in and said, I don't care about your commitments, figure this one out, because it's arguably on this list next to Elder Scrolls 6, the most important one. Given what Josh Sawyer had said about Obsidian's more visualized pitch process, I imagine this pitch was made in Unreal Engine, presented, and they went, hey, this looks very Fallout. Should we do this in Creation Engine instead? Even though it's safe to assume the remasters will be in Unreal Engine, so is it okay that some are in Unreal Engine and some are in Creation Engine? And there seems to be a debate about that. Asha Sharma wants to get away from vendors, and if they could use their own proprietary tech, Creation Engine would make them more money. All of this is going to come down to how involved Bethesda Game Studios is. If they're overseeing and managing this project and that's it, it's going to fall to Obsidian because their tech stack is ready to support a Fallout-style video game, and it'll get it out quicker. If Bethesda is heavily involved in active development on this game, that's not to say that their team could not learn how to use Unreal Engine. That wouldn't be useful, but retraining talent would fight against time itself. I view this a lot like how Bethesda Game Studios and ZeniMax Online Studios formerly worked together on The Elder Scrolls Online. They would call in and check with Bethesda Game Studios, but ZeniMax Online Studios used their own tech stack. Let's get into setting a little bit. This is a key point in any Fallout video game. It's the selling point, baby. It's the same thing with Assassin's Creed. What's the time period? Am I in or am I out? Well, there was one idea that was kicking around Obsidian Entertainment. Avellone confirmed this recently, that they were thinking about Fallout New Orleans. They originally pitched this to Bethesda Game Studios because they rejected the idea of a Fallout San Francisco.
No, please, God, no. Go away. Don't take me to New Orleans. I could care less about New Orleans. I really am not gonna be that guy. Oh my God, it's New Orleans. I'm just not. I live in the Mojave. I want the remaster, and I want a new one out here. I don't even care. Give me Area 51. What the f is going on? I mean, why can't we do one
now,
of
it seems like that actually stuck with Josh Sawyer,
go there to verify the things?
When he was interviewed by Kind of Funny Games,
well, it's never the point in the game.
Had to say about working
they're
in
not
the Fallout
even
universe
trying.
Again. I'm not really sure. I haven't thought about it in quite a while because, again, it kind of came into my life and then flowed away. In the past, I've said, people have talked about New Orleans. I do think California or the Midwest would also be very interesting. And I also think the New Orleans setting has a bit of potential because we know almost nothing about it.
Come over here to Joshua Tree, California, please. We'll love you forever. Long time.
There's only one official mentioning of New Orleans in the Fallout universe, and that's in Fallout 76, specifically the Skyline Valley update. It's there that we learn that Cassidy Stolz is from New Orleans. This has to do with the entire Lost storyline there, but the long story short is that you can find letters about New Orleans all throughout Vault 63. One letter in particular has Cassidy being thanked for a donation to an artist friend named Catherine. This allowed her to get one of her pieces displayed in the New Orleans Museum of Art. Cassidy herself really liked the French quarters of New Orleans, but otherwise we don't really know anything at all. There's settings in Fallout like New York City where folks look at the wiki and go, oh, that actually is a complete crater. They could never go there. But there's nothing saying you can't go there for New Orleans. So I think Fallout New Orleans would be absolutely awesome when you think about the culture that they could lean into, on top of just how old the city is. There's just a lot of Fallout energy in that. It's a very popular fan theory. However, you have to acknowledge the project name, which usually isn't this on the nose with any studio. The whole point of code names is to not really land on something so obviously, but let's say it is Michigan focused. I mean, that would be interesting because you're right there on the border of Canada, and you've seen how the Fallout TV show with season 2 specifically, the storytelling improved a lot when they started to explore the annexation of Canada. So you could have this Fallout video game that sort of walks the line a little bit of partially Canada, but also partially the United States. And I think that would be awesome. Given that Bethesda Game Studios has specifically asked Obsidian to not take San Francisco off the map when they were working on New Vegas, they specifically told them they can't do San Francisco at all when they were pitching projects after New Vegas, and also that Bethesda Game Studios was protective of San Francisco during the production of the Fallout TV show. And last but not least, Bethesda does like to tease things in their Fallout games for what's coming up. For example, in Fallout 3, the reason we were all speculating about Fallout 4 going to the Commonwealth was because of the Replicated Man questline. And funny enough, in Fallout 4, you see during Kellogg's Memories a lot of San Francisco stuff. So it feels like Bethesda's been across the board putting out San Francisco everywhere for what they're going to do next in the franchise. So that's what narrows me down away from West Coast Fallout and into something a little bit different, which again would be very exciting for me and others. Now, one of the things that has us so excited about the idea of Obsidian Entertainment working on a Fallout video game is because who they have there. We've long celebrated what I like to call the fearsome fivesome. You've got Josh Sawyer, John Gonzalez, Fergus Urquhart, Tim Kaine, and Leonard Boyarsky. But the question is, would they all be working on this? We already know Josh Sawyer is in because thank you, Jason Schreier, for that. But how about someone such as Tim Kaine? Well, Tim Kaine has a great YouTube channel that you should check out, but it's on that very channel that he has videos of him talking about the idea of working on another Fallout video game and what would get him through the door. When Tim Kaine joined Obsidian Entertainment, he did mention that it was not to go work on a Fallout video game. Mind you, this was prior to Obsidian being put on a Fallout video game. According to this video that Tim Kaine posted, he would need something new. It would have to excite him. He has to do something entirely new, which feeds a little bit into my theory of I think he could be drawn to this project simply by nature of what I was talking about Sawyer, who also wanted to do something new, who is seeking out a little bit more creative freedom next go around with Fallout because that's what would get him on board. And if he agreed to direct the game, then I'd have to think it's something a little bit different and not just another Fallout video game. So I could see Tim Kaine gravitating to the project, but definitely not a guarantee. John Gonzalez rejoined Obsidian and immediately quelled any Fallout return rumors on his LinkedIn profile. Now, it's claimed by Chris Avallone that John Gonzalez is overseeing a Shadowrun project, and the question remains is if this project is still alive given all the changes at Obsidian. One would assume so, but funny enough, there actually is a quote from Fergus Urquhart very recently saying that if he couldn't have Fallout, he'd take Shadowrun. And now he has both. That man's living good right now. My personal guess in all of this, though, is that this is what Tim Kaine returned to Obsidian to work on. And if this project isn't canceled, then I could see these two interacting with Fallout, helping oversee it, but I don't know if they're going to be actively working on it. So that leaves us with people like Leonard Boyarsky, and he seems to be a little bit of a free agent. Not to be parasocial, but we know he's pretty close with Tim Kaine, and their partnership spanned decades, from Fallout to Troika, and of course, The Outer Worlds 1, where they reunited. He was the creative director on The Outer Worlds 2, and I can honestly see a world where he ends up with Tim as much as he does Josh. I doubt he's overseeing The Outer Worlds 2 DLC, since traditionally Obsidian likes to use that to raise up new developers into director roles. I'm going to give John Gonzalez a maybe, since Shadowrun might be on pause, and that means that he could switch over to a different project. Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky are going to fall in the same camp as a result of this. And last but not least is Fergus Urquhart. Yeah, he's the CEO, but yeah, I think he's getting his hands dirty here. I think the amount of begging this guy has done over the years, he better be on this thing, man. I would truly be stunned if they were not utilizing all of this Fallout talent in the building. The question is if it's their main focus or their kind of B focus, and then A is maybe the Shadowrun project. Now, that's just my close-up examination of all the people who have deep history with the Fallout franchise. But what about those who are lesser known but senior talent in Obsidian, people who have stuck with Obsidian in general since Fallout New Vegas? Well, Chris Avallone, who helped write New Vegas, was a project director for its DLC, and his official title was Chief Creative Officer at Obsidian when this game was shipping, put together a handy list that we'll no doubt reference for years to come. And of the 73 developers that worked on New Vegas, how about that? A team under 100 people in today's industry. Can't even imagine that on a AAA
That's
level.
Not how you run that, dude. You definitely
work
gotta
at
heal,
Obsidian
and you
from
gotta
those
like
73,
dodge
but they are
better than
also
that.
listed
That's
in
ridiculous.
key roles. Specifically, Chris did mention that Tim and Leonard are big pluses in this case. I think it's huge that a lot of ex-New Vegas people are in senior positions at the team, because that is familiarity with a project that means a lot to people, and they're also making some of the key decisions for the game. Whether or not those people are assigned on the project is a different story, but there is a decent amount of turnover here given today's industry, but not a lot of those ex-devs are here. So those are my findings. With that, I want to give you all just some general thoughts to round things up. First off, I don't think it'll be New Vegas 2. Again, Bethesda's already doing this with the TV show, so I don't think we need to use the code name New Vegas 2. Just Obsidian's new Fallout game until we get an official date works for me. But the expectations are also grand with this, and I think going into a New Vegas 2 or something that evokes a New Vegas 2 would actually make matters worse, because a lot of people still believe that Obsidian isn't the developers that they once were. As for my predictions on when we see this, a lot of it depends on Project Michigan, but I'll put this in the 4-year window. I have to imagine part of the reason this got greenlit is we need to get something out ASAP that is new and not just a remaster. The remasters will do great. If Oblivion Remaster was anything to go by, Fallout 3 and New Vegas Remaster are going to sell even better. Xbox will be very happy with those game sales, provided they are multi-platform, which is another big question mark in all of this, because then you're hitting into the overall sales where we already know Oblivion Remaster had to be like 10+ million, dude. Other general takeaways, I'm still going in on the New Orleans theory as a setting until we start to find out otherwise. This is a traditional Fallout video game. I don't think anyone's putting a gun to Obsidian's head. There was even posts being made on Reddit Gaming Leaks and Rumors that was showing how Matthew Singh, who was the gameplay director for The Outer Worlds 2, was liking posts on LinkedIn of people saying, like, man, it's a shame what Obsidian had happened to them, but also, like, it's cool that they get this opportunity. He's like, yeah, you're kind of right. There's staff in that building on a leadership level that's obsessed with this project. So all in all, the deduction here is I'm thinking it won't be too long, like 5-6 years, because Obsidian has a really great development cadence, that this will likely be a first-person open-world game with something new that we haven't seen before in a Fallout video game, and honestly, the return of some old stuff that have been long overdue, like skill checks, like choice and consequence, that kind of thing. And that a lot of the old talent in the building is there, but it's a little bit of a coin toss right now on what exactly they're working on. So those are my findings. Thanks for tuning in to Dr. Maddie's seminar. I'd love to hear from you down below. What deductions have you made? Fire away. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active.
Okay. So he already said majority of the things that I'd like to say, like when it comes to that, like just get it done and spend too long, whatever. Anyway, with that being said, I've been your host, Clifford Johnson, with the Mojave Podcast Transmission, and I will see you tomorrow. And for more news, breakdowns, and reactions, I'm going to be coming back on later for my gaming. Thank you guys. It's probably going to be Borderlands 2 playthrough. And this says it's going to be the second playthrough. No, Borderlands 1 playthrough 2 part 2. Anyway, thank you guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this with other people who like this different type of content. And have a great rest of your evening, afternoon, and night if you don't stop by for my